Ichika was the only male student in the new academic year at Infinite Stratos Academy, and for him, the first day of school felt overwhelming and nerve-wracking. Before long, his homeroom assistant teacher, Maya, stepped up to the front of the class and greeted the students. None of them responded, which made Maya visibly anxious. She explained that everyone there was a new student at Infinite Stratos Academy. Nervously, she mentioned that it was a boarding school, meaning they would be together both during and after school hours. Maya encouraged everyone to get to know each other better so that the next 3 years could be enjoyable for all of them. She then began taking attendance one by one. Ichika looked extremely tense and tried to call out to Haoki, but she turned her head away. Ichika was confused by her reaction. After all, they were childhood friends who had just reunited after 6 years. He started to wonder if maybe Haoki held some resentment toward him. Maya suddenly called Ichika's name loudly, startling him and making the class burst into laughter. She asked him to introduce himself. Ichika stood up, said his name, and greeted everyone, but most of the students stared at him coldly. He figured that if he kept quiet, they might assume he was gloomy or antisocial. He let out a sigh, and everyone thought he was about to say something more, but he ended it there. Suddenly, a teacher entered the classroom and smacked Ichika on the head. He was completely caught off guard when he realized that it was Chifuyu, his older sister. Ichika reflexively called her older sister, but she immediately hit him again and told him to address her as Ms. Instructor while at school. It turned out Chifuyu had been in a staff meeting, so she had asked Maya to handle the welcome for the new students. Ichika was surprised to see his sister at Infinite Stratos Academy. Her job had always been a mystery, and she would only come home once or twice a year. Chifuyu introduced herself as their homeroom teacher and firmly stated that her goal was to make sure every one of them became competent within the year. Her commanding tone and charismatic presence made the students cheer with excitement. Many of them admired her deeply, and some had even enrolled in the academy just to meet her, including one student who came all the way from northern Kyushu. Chifuyu found it ridiculous that so many airheaded students had ended up in her class. Ichika was shocked to learn that Chifuyu would be his homeroom teacher. She questioned why he had failed to properly introduce himself earlier. When he called her older sister again, she pressed his head down once more. The students started to wonder if Ichika's ability to use the Infinite Stratos was because he was Chifuyu's younger brother. Chifuyu told them to settle down. She announced that she would have them master the basics of Infinite Stratos within 6 months. Only after that would they begin practical training. She gave them just half a month to learn the basic movements. The entire class responded in unison, agreeing to the challenge. It turned out that Chifuyu had once been one of Japan's first-generation Infinite Stratos pilots, but one day she suddenly resigned and disappeared from the public eye. Even Ichika never knew that she had become a teacher, and he regretted worrying about her for so long. Maya then explained that Infinite Stratos was a type of multiform suit developed in Japan. It was originally created 10 years ago with the purpose of space exploration, but development was halted under the Alaska Treaty. The treaty prohibited Infinite Stratos from being used as a military weapon, so it was rebranded as a form of competitive sport. Infinite Stratos Academy was the only training school in the world dedicated to its pilots. Students from all over the globe gathered there to learn how to pilot the suits. Technically, only females could operate the Infinite Stratos, and Ichika was the sole exception, the only male in the world capable of using it. During the break, the students kept watching Ichika, curious about the only boy in the world who could operate an Infinite Stratos. Ichika felt uncomfortable and wished someone would come save him. Suddenly, Haoki approached and asked him to step outside the classroom. Ichika asked if there was something she wanted to tell him, especially since they had not seen each other in 6 years. Haoki looked really nervous. Ichika then congratulated her for winning the national kendo tournament. Haoki was surprised and asked how he knew about that. Ichika said he had read it in the newspaper. He smiled and said even though it had been 6 years since they last saw each other, he could still recognize her instantly, especially since her hairstyle had not changed at all. Haoki looked embarrassed but thanked him for still remembering her. Ichika said there was no way he could ever forget her. Just then, the bell rang. A few students had been watching them from a distance, wondering if Haoki might be a friend of Ichika's. Ichika invited Haoki to head back to class. Later that day, Maya had just finished explaining the lesson and asked the students if anyone had questions about the material. Ichika was completely confused and wondered if he really had to memorize everything in the book. Maya walked up to him and asked if there was anything he wanted to ask. Ichika admitted that he did not understand anything at all. Maya was shocked and asked the rest of the class if anyone else was having trouble with the lesson, but no one did, only Ichika was struggling. Then Chifuyu came over and asked Ichika if he had not read the textbook before school started. Ichika said he had accidentally thrown it away. Chifuyu slapped him and told him she would give him another copy, but he had to memorize the entire book within a week. Ichika obviously protested, but Chifuyu firmly insisted. During the next break, a girl named Cecilia approached Ichika. Charlotte was surprised by how Ichika responded. It came off as a bit rude. Ichika admitted that he did not recognize Cecilia. She was confused as to how he did not know who she was, considering she was the representative of the United Kingdom and had scored the highest on the entrance exam. Ichika then asked what country representative even meant. Cecilia was stunned and wondered if Japanese boys simply lacked basic general knowledge. Ichika asked again what a country representative was, and Cecilia explained that it referred to elite candidates chosen to represent their nation as Infinite Stratos pilots. Cecilia proudly described herself as an elite noble and said people should feel honored to be in the same class as her. Ichika replied that this meant he was lucky, which made Cecilia feel like he was mocking her. She could not understand how someone like Ichika had managed to enroll in the Infinite Stratos Academy while knowing so little. As far as she knew, he was supposed to be the only boy able to operate in Infinite Stratos, but now she was disappointed. Cecilia claimed she was generous, so if there was anything Ichika did not understand, she would teach him, as long as he was willing to ask her nicely. She also boasted that she was the only candidate who had defeated her examiner during the entrance exam. Ichika said that he too had defeated his examiner. Cecilia was stunned, unable to believe it. Ichika explained that the examiner charged straight at him, so he dodged, and the examiner ended up crashing into a wall and stopped moving. Cecilia was not having it. She could not accept that Ichika had defeated the examiner after all. She believed she was the only one who had ever done that. Just then, the school bell rang. Cecilia left but said she would continue their conversation another time. Classes ended for the day, and Ichika headed to his dorm room. When he opened the door, he suddenly heard a girl's voice from the bathroom. It turned out to be his roommate, who said she hoped they would get along. The girl had just finished showering and was wearing only a towel. Ichika was shocked to see Haoki in the room. She was extremely embarrassed and quickly tried to cover herself. She asked why Ichika was in her room, and he said he had been assigned to that room too. He had no idea Haoki would be his roommate. Haoki immediately grabbed her kendo stick and attacked him. She even stabbed it through the door as Ichika tried to close it. Ichika wondered if she was trying to kill him. He would have been seriously hurt if he had not dodged. The commotion drew the attention of other students, and soon a crowd had gathered outside the room. They didn't expect that Ichika's room would be located there. Ichika himself was shocked to see the girls dressed so revealingly. He pleaded with Haoki to open the door and let him in. Haoki stepped out of the room and told Ichika to hurry and get inside. Once inside, she asked Ichika to explain why they were assigned to the same room, even though boys and girls had been separated by beds since the age of 7. Ichika said that kind of rule was outdated, but he admitted that sharing a room after the age of 15 could definitely be an issue. Haoki then asked what exactly Ichika was hoping to gain from sharing a room with her. Ichika responded that he wasn't that foolish. Hearing that, Haoki pointed her kendo sword at him and called him an idiot. Ichika tried to block the kendo stick, clearly scared by Haoki's intense expression. Their friends watching from the doorway felt a little sorry for Haoki. Eventually, she ended her attack and quickly closed the door. She told Ichika that they probably needed to set some boundaries since they would be sharing a room. Haoki set up a bath schedule. She would bathe from 7 to 8, and Ichika could use the bathroom from 8 to 9. Ichika said he preferred to shower earlier. Haoki asked if Ichika expected her to stay sweaty after kendo practice. He pointed out that the kendo club had showers too, but Haoki insisted that she couldn't relax unless she used her own bathroom. Ichika mentioned that home bathrooms were definitely more comfortable than school ones, then realized their room didn't even have a toilet. Haoki explained that the toilets were at the end of the hallway. When Ichika commented that the school was full of female students, Haoki immediately brandished her kendo stick again. She knew exactly what kind of thought Ichika was having. Not wanting to back down, Ichika picked up a kendo stick to defend himself. But to his surprise, Haoki's bra had gotten caught on the tip of his kendo. Embarrassed, Haoki quickly grabbed it back. Ichika, completely innocent, commented that he hadn't realized she wore a bra. Flustered and humiliated, Haoki hit him out of frustration. The next morning at the cafeteria, Ichika and Haoki were having breakfast together. Ichika asked how long Haoki was planning to stay mad at him. She denied being upset, but Ichika pointed out that she looked clearly annoyed. While they were eating, some girls at another table were whispering about how Ichika was the younger brother of Chifuyu. Haoki grew irritated when Ichika casually mentioned her childhood nickname. Soon after, 3 girls approached and asked if they could sit beside Ichika. He welcomed them. Their names were Nagi, Yuko, and Hane. They looked excited to sit next to him. Haoki commented on how much food Ichika was eating. In contrast, Ichika noticed how small the girls' portions were and asked if it was okay for girls to eat so little for breakfast. The 3 of them smiled and admitted they preferred to save room for snacks. After finishing her breakfast, Haoki quickly left. Yuko asked if Ichika was close with Haoki. Nanji even knew that they shared a room. Ichika confirmed it and added that he and Haoki had been childhood friends. The 3 girls were surprised. Ichika explained they had been classmates from 1st to 4th grade, though he didn't remember too much about it. Suddenly, Chifuyu arrived and told everyone to finish their meals quickly. Apparently, besides being their homeroom teacher, Chifuryu was also the dorm supervisor for the first years. She warned that anyone who was late would have to run 10 laps around the field. Ichika finally realized why his sister rarely came home. Her responsibilities were overwhelming. During class, Chifuryu informed everyone that there would be an inter-class tournament happening in 2 weeks. Because of that, each class needed to choose a representative. The class representative wouldn't just compete in the tournament, but also attend student council and event planning meetings. Basically, the role would be similar to that of a class president. Chifuryu asked the students to either nominate themselves or someone else. Out of nowhere, one student nominated Ichika, and soon after, a few others followed. Chifuryu asked if there were any other candidates. If not, Ichika would be appointed automatically. But Ichika declined the nomination. Not long after, Cecilia spoke up, saying she wasn't okay with how the selection was being handled. In her opinion, having a male class representative was embarrassing. She admitted she would feel ashamed if Ichika represented the school for the whole year. On top of that, she was already feeling burdened having to live in what she called an underdeveloped country. Ichika didn't take that well and fired back, saying that England wasn't exactly something to be proud of either. According to him, the only thing England would win was a global competition for disgusting food. Cecilia disagreed and said England had plenty of delicious dishes. She got irritated that Ichika was insulting her country. Eventually, Cecilia challenged Ichika to a match and Ichika accepted. Cecilia warned him that if he threw the match on purpose, she'd make him her servant. Ichika then asked how much of a handicap he should give her. That made everyone laugh. They were surprised by how serious Ichika seemed, especially since many believed that men only had the upper hand until Infinite Stratos units were invented. Cecilia mocked Ichika, calling him a funny Japanese guy. One of the students suggested that he ask for a handicap, but Ichika said a man never takes back his word. Chifuryu then stepped in and scheduled the match between Ichika and Cecilia for Monday in Arena 3. She told both of them to get ready. That day, Chifuryu informed Ichika that his Infinite Stratos unit needed more time before it could be used, and since there were no spare units available, the school had decided to build one specifically for him. Upon hearing this, the other students felt quite envious. They wished they could have their own personalized Infinite Stratos as well. Ichika wondered if having a personal unit was really that impressive. Cecilia expressed her delight at the news, saying it pretty much guaranteed the winner of the upcoming representative tournament. From her point of view, it wouldn't be fair if she used a personal Infinite Stratos while Ichika had to rely on a training unit. This surprised Ichika, who had just learned that Cecilia also had her own personal unit. Cecilia explained that as a representative of the United Kingdom, she had been granted one. She also mentioned that only 467 Infinite Stratos units existed in the world, and only the elite among the elite were given personal ones. Ichika was shocked to hear that there were only 467 units. Shizune stepped in to explain that the core technology inside each Infinite Stratos had never been made public. That was why only 467 existed. All the cores had been created by Professor Thabane, Haoki's older sister. The core technology remained a complete mystery, and no one other than Professor Thabane had been able to replicate it. Unfortunately, Thabane had refused to produce more than the original set. Because of this, countries, companies, and organizations had to make do with the limited number of cores available to them for research and development. Chifuryu then explained that personal Infinite Stratos units were normally only given to those working for governments or owned by major corporations. However, due to Ichika's unique status, he would be receiving a personal unit for data collection purposes. Shizune asked Chifuryu if Haoki was really related to Thabane, and Chifuryu confirmed that Haoki was her younger sister. The students were shocked. They had a hard time believing it, especially since Professor Thabane had gone missing and was being sought after by several countries and organizations. Naturally, they asked Haoki if she knew where Thabane was. With a sharp tone, Haoki responded that she had no idea where Thabane had gone. And honestly, she didn't care. Haoki made it clear that she was not her sister, and there was nothing she could tell them. At that point, Chifuryu instructed Maya to begin the lesson. Ichika couldn't help but wonder if something was off in Haoki's relationship with her older sister. During the lesson, Maya explained that Infinite Stratos units protect their pilots using a special energy shield. Each unit possesses something similar to a consciousness, allowing them to communicate with their pilot. Over time, the unit would gradually become more familiar with the pilot's thought patterns. While Maya was giving this explanation, Ichika couldn't understand a word and kept glancing at Haoki from time to time. Maya told the class to think of their Infinite Stratos unit as a partner. Yuko then asked if by partner, she meant something like a romantic relationship. Maya wasn't sure. She admitted she didn't have the experience to answer and that she was curious about it herself. At that moment, Ichika finally realized what it was like to attend an all-girls school. During lunch break, Ichika invited Haoki to eat together, but she ignored him. So he invited a few other classmates instead. Yuko, Hane, and Nagi happily accepted. Ichika said it would be more fun to get along with classmates, but Haoki still refused to join. Ichika tried to tug her along, but she resisted. Jokingly, Ichika teased that if she wouldn't walk, he might have to carry her. Haoki looked visibly upset and suddenly threw Ichika to the ground, which surprised the surrounding students. Ichika commented that Haoki had gotten even stronger, but Haoki shot back saying that Ichika was just getting weaker. According to her, what she had just done was simply a new trick she had picked up from her kendo training. Naji, Hane, and Yuko quickly left the area, clearly intimidated by what they had just seen. Ichika then grabbed Haoki's arm and insisted they eat lunch together, and after some hesitation, Haoki agreed. When they got to the cafeteria, Ichika gently told her not to be so self-centered all the time, which confused Haoki. He explained that what was actually on his mind was her. Ichika reminded her that he had been taken care of by Haoki's family, and since they were childhood friends who trained in the same martial art, it was only natural that he cared about her. After that, they started looking for an empty table to sit and eat together. While they were eating, Ichika asked Haoki to teach him more about Infinite Stratos. He admitted that if things kept going the way they were, he would probably lose to Cecilia without even putting up a fight. Haoki, however, blamed Ichika for getting himself into that kind of trouble. Ichika even went as far as pleading with her to help. Just then, a senior student from Class 3 approached and offered to teach Ichika about Infinite Stratos. She mentioned she knew he was still a beginner, and that he was scheduled to fight Cecilia soon. Haoki quickly stepped in and declared that she would be the one to train Ichika. The senior scoffed, saying that Haoki was just her first year, while she was already in her third year. But Haoki calmly replied that she was Thabana's younger sister, so that it shouldn't be a problem. Hearing that, the senior backed off and left. Ichika felt relieved and thankful that Haoki agreed to help him. Later that day, Ichika and Haoki were practicing kendo together, but Ichika was struggling to keep up. Haoki was confused about why Ichika was performing so poorly and asked what club he had joined during middle school. Ichika confessed that he went straight home every day and had missed a single day of school for 3 years. Haoki decided she would retrain him from the beginning, saying that this issue was more urgent than Infinite Stratos itself. She told Ichika she would train him for 3 hours after school every day. Although Ichika said he still needed to learn about Infinite Stratos, Haoki insisted that his current condition was way more serious. A few nearby students even began to doubt whether someone as unskilled as Ichika could actually control an Infinite Stratos unit. After training, Haoki started questioning whether she had been too harsh on Ichika. Still, she convinced herself that she had done the right thing, especially since he hadn't picked up a kendo sword in over a year. In her eyes, Ichika had changed a lot during the 6 years they had been apart. Determined to help him, Haoki made up her mind to continue training Ichika every day after school. That way, she could also spend more time with him. But then she grew embarrassed by her own thoughts and brushed them aside, trying to convince herself that she was doing all of this simply out of frustration with someone who wasn't taking martial arts seriously. A week later, the Infinite Stratos match between Ichika and Cecilia was about to begin. Ichika turned to Haoki and asked why she hadn't taught him anything about Infinite Stratos during their week of training. They had only practiced kendo the entire time. Haoki looked away and said that the unit Ichika was supposed to use hadn't been available yet. Ichika pointed out that she still could have explained the theory or gone over some basics, but Haoki just kept avoiding eye contact. At that moment, they were watching Cecilia's personal Infinite Stratos unit on the monitor. Soon after, Maya came in and announced that Ichika's own unit was ready. Shifuyu instructed him to get in immediately, noting that they didn't have much time. She urged him to start learning how to move during combat right away. Then Ichika's personal Infinite Stratos unit was revealed. It was called Byakushiki. Shifuyu told him to suit up immediately and begin adjusting to how it moved in battle. Ichika reached out and touched Byakushiki, and right away something felt different compared to the first time he had ever come into contact with an Infinite Stratos. As his hand rested on it, he began to understand what it was and why it existed. He also started to connect with it on a deeper level. Shifuyu asked him to relax his back as if he were sitting down, since the system would automatically adjust itself to him. Byakushiki then began to boot up and access its system. Maya provided some background information explaining that Cecilia's Infinite Stratos was called Blue Tears. Blue Tears was designed for long-range combat, while Byakushiki was equipped with a feature called Absolute Defense. This meant it was built to protect its pilot at all costs against any kind of attack. However, activating this feature would consume a large amount of shield energy. Ichika was ready for his match against Cecilia. He headed straight to the battle arena. Cecilia was already waiting, and with her usual arrogance declared that she would give him a chance to surrender and apologize. Of course, Ichika refused. Cecilia immediately fired at him, landing a direct hit on Byakushiki's shoulder. The audience was stunned. Ichika realized that it felt like he couldn't keep up with Byakushiki's speed. Cecilia kept firing and Ichika did his best to dodge her attacks. Each shot from her kept reducing Byakushiki's shield energy. At that moment, it became clear that Byakushiki only had one weapon and Ichika decided to use it. Cecilia mocked him, calling him foolish for choosing to fight her using a close-range weapon. The students watching the match kept cheering with excitement, while Haoki looked deeply worried about Ichika. Cecilia admitted that Ichika was the first person who had managed to last that long in a debut match against her Blue Tears. She continued to attack, but Ichika kept dodging and closing the distance between them, which made Cecilia nervous. Ichika figured out that Cecilia's weapons were controlled by her commands, and while she was actively using those weapons, she couldn't switch to another type of attack at the same time. Maya commented that Ichika was truly impressive, even saying it was hard to believe this was only his second time activating an Infinite Stratos. However, Shifuyu felt Ichika might be getting too confident. She noticed that he kept moving his left hand, a habit he usually displayed when he had made a small mistake. At that point, Haoki was visibly worried about him. There were only 2 shots left coming at Ichika. He knew Cecilia was keeping her distance, but he also believed that he had the upper hand if the fight came down to close combat. Unfortunately, Cecilia still had another attack left and quickly launched it. The hit looked like it struck him directly, but Byakushiki suddenly shifted form and shielded Ichika. Everyone watching was shocked as Ichika's Infinite Stratos transformed. A system notification appeared in front of Ichika, letting him know that a change had occurred. Cecilia was surprised to learn that Ichika had been fighting in default configuration mode the entire time. Ichika didn't fully understand what was going on, but in that moment, he felt like Byakushiki had finally become truly his. Byakushiki then revealed a new weapon, Yukira Type 2, the same type used by Chifuyu. Ichika acknowledged himself that he had the most amazing older sister in the world, but he also knew it was time to stop relying on her to protect him all the time. From now on, he had to protect his family too. To start, he had to defend her reputation because in his eyes, Shifuyu wouldn't look cool if her little brother ended up being a loser. Frustrated, Cecilia launched a barrage of shots at him, but Ichika deflected them with ease and quickly closed in for a close-range attack. Just before his Yukira could strike her, Byakushiki's shield energy finally ran out, meaning the match had come to an end. As a result, the winner was declared to be Cecilia. The announcement shocked the audience, who had been captivated by the intense match. After the match, Ichika met with Shifuyu and asked why he had lost. Shifuyu explained that it was because Ichika had used an anti-shield attack, which happened as a result of fighting without fully understanding the function of his weapon. Ichika then asked what exactly an anti-shield attack was. Shifuyu told him that an attack capable of penetrating the enemy's shield and directly hitting the pilot was a special ability of Yukira. In fact, she added, Yukira's attacks drained Byakushiki's energy in order to be executed. That weapon, she revealed, had been the key to her victory in the first Mondo Grosso. Hearing this helped Ichika understand why Byakushiki's shield energy had been depleted. Maya explained that an Infinite Stratos battle ends when one side runs out of shield energy. The anti-shield ability could defeat an opponent by draining the user's own shield energy, making it a double-edged sword. Shifuyu pointed out that in other words, Ichika's Infinite Stratos had its flaws. No was ever perfect, each one came with its own drawbacks. However, Ichika's had a stronger offensive capability compared to the others. At that time, Byakushiki was in standby mode, but it could activate at any moment if Ichika called for it. Maya handed Ichika the Infinite Stratos manual and asked him to read through it. After that, Ichika walked alongside Haoki. He was curious why she was staring at him. Haoki said losing was more frustrating than she expected and mentioned that starting tomorrow, they would begin training with their own Infinite Stratos units. She asked if Ichika wanted her to teach him. Ichika admitted he felt more at ease around Haoki than with any of the other girls, not only because she was the band's younger sister, but also because he believed she knew a lot about Infinite Stratos. Hearing this made Haoki a bit flustered, but she agreed to help and told him to make some time during the day starting tomorrow so she could teach him. Meanwhile, Cecilia was taking a bath, still thinking about the match earlier. The emotions she felt weren't exactly pleasant. Even though she had technically won the match, she had to admit that Ichika's abilities were impressive. That day, the students of Class 101 at Infinite Stratos High School were about to start their basic air movement training with their Infinite Stratos units. Shifuyu asked Ichika and Cecilia to demonstrate first. Cecilia stepped up right away and effortlessly activated her Infinite Stratos from the earring she wore. Ichika followed but seemed to have some trouble. Shifuyu pointed out that it should take less than a second for a pilot to activate their unit. Ichika focused, and after a short delay, he finally managed to activate Byakushiki. Afterward, Shifuyu instructed both Ichika and Cecilia to take flight. Cecilia soared through the air with impressive speed, while Ichika followed behind her. Shifuyu commented that Ichika was too slow. According to her, Byakushiki should have been faster than Cecilia's unit based on its specs. Ichika looked confused. He thought he had already imagined how to control it. However, Cecilia told him that simply imagining it was not enough. It would be better if he tried to find a method that truly worked for him. Ichika admitted that he did not fully understand how to fly and wasn't even sure how his own unit was able to fly at all. Hearing that, Cecilia offered to help him after school. Not long after, Chifuryu instructed them to dive and come to a quick stop. Cecilia executed the maneuver flawlessly. Ichika admitted she was amazing and gave it a try himself. However, as he attempted to land, Ichika lost control and crashed to the ground. Haoki, Maya, and Chifuryu quickly rushed to check on him. Ichika said he was in pain and Haoki looked relieved that he was okay. Chifuryu, however, was puzzled about what Ichika had done to leave such a hole in the ground. Ichika apologized while Haoki expressed her disappointment that he had not mastered anything she had tried to teach him. Suddenly, Cecilia came over to check on him, surprising Ichika with her concern. Cecilia was relieved he was safe and suggested that he go to the student infirmary just to be sure. Haoki disagreed, saying that because Ichika had been using an infinite Stratos, he wouldn't get hurt that easily. Cecilia responded that worrying about others was only natural. The two of them then started arguing, criticizing each other in front of everyone. Ichika was baffled about why they could never seem to get along. The next day, Class 1-1 held a small celebration for Ichika, who had been chosen as their class representative. Ichika was confused about why he had been selected. It turned out that Cecilia had declined the position. Although Ichika had lost their match, she believed that he deserved the role because he had managed to challenge her properly. She had reflected on her behavior that day and realized it caused too much chaos, and chose to step back so Ichika could take the spot instead. Their classmates agreed and even said that as the only boy in class, Ichika should be pampered. Haoki, standing nearby, looked annoyed by how popular Ichika had become. Ichika noticed for scowling and wondered what was bothering her. Suddenly, a student from the journalism club named Karuko appeared and snapped a photo of Ichika. She asked to take a picture of him and Cecilia together. Since they were a well-known duo, both having personal Infinite Stratos units, Karuko even requested them to pose with a handshake. Cecilia looked delighted and asked if she could get a copy of the photo as well. Karuko promised she would send her one. As they stood side by side and leaned in slightly for the shot, Haoki could be seen frowning nearby. Right as Karuko prepared to take the picture, all the other students suddenly joined in, crowding the frame. Cecilia was visibly annoyed. They had all jumped in to prevent her from getting a solo shot with Ichika. That night in their dorm room, Haoki mentioned that Ichika must have enjoyed the day. Ichika admitted he was exhausted and asked if she would enjoy being in his position. Haoki frowned and threw a pillow at him. Ichika was confused by her reaction. She said she wanted to change into her sleepwear and asked him to turn around. Ichika suggested that next time she should change while he was brushing his teeth. Haoki quickly pulled the curtain between their beds and changed clothes. Meanwhile, Ichika, nervously aware of what was happening, sat still until Haoki finished putting on her kimono. When she was done, Ichika noticed the sash she was wearing and commented that it looked new. Haoki didn't expect Ichika to be that observant, but of course he had noticed. He looked at Haoki every single day. That night, Haoki invited Ichika to go to sleep and turned off the lights in the room. Before they dozed off, she apologized to him for being so difficult lately. Ichika told her it didn't bother him at all. The next day in class, the students were buzzing with news that the class representative of 1-2 had been replaced because of a transfer student. Yuko mentioned that the new student came from China. With full confidence, Cecilia guessed that they were probably looking for someone strong enough to compete with her. Ichika became curious. Was this new student really that powerful? Shizune didn't think so. She said it was unlikely because only students from classes 1-1 and 1-4 had personal Infinite Stratos units. But just then, a girl entered the classroom announcing that the new class 1-2 representative did in fact have her own IS, so class 1-1 wasn't going to win that easily. To Ichika's surprise, he recognized her. The girl's name was Lingyan, and she was the transfer student from China. Lingyan stepped forward and boldly declared the challenge to the class. Cecilia couldn't believe how casually Lingyan was acting around Ichika. Ichika, confused by her behavior, asked why she was trying so hard to act cool. That wasn't like her at all. Lingyan got annoyed, but before things escalated, Chifuryu suddenly knocked her lightly on the head and reminded her that it was time for homeroom. She told Lingyan to head back to her own classroom so she wouldn't cause a distraction 1-1. Lingyan left reluctantly, clearly not finished with Ichika just yet. Later during lunch in the cafeteria, Ichika ran into Lingyan again. He was still surprised that she had become her country's representative and now stood in for class 1-2. He asked why she hadn't told him beforehand. Lingyan said that if she had told him in advance, their reunion wouldn't have been nearly as dramatic. Ichika then asked if she still felt awkward around Chifuryu. Lingyan admitted that it wasn't awkward, they just didn't get along very well. As she ordered a bowl of ramen, Ichika wasn't surprised at all. She had always loved ramen. He asked how she had been during the year they hadn't seen each other. The other students from class 1-1 started to get irritated watching Ichika and Lingyan chatting so closely. They kept glancing over at the two of them, obviously not pleased. Ichika asked when Lingyan had become her country's representative. She said she was shocked when she first saw Ichika on the news. Ichika himself couldn't believe he had ended up at Infinite Stratos either. Lingyan mentioned that she had heard about what happened during Ichika's entrance exam, how he had accidentally activated an Infinite Stratos. She asked how that even happened. Ichika explained that the entrance test was held in a building with lots of rooms. He got lost and tried to ask the staff for help, but didn't understand their directions. He ended up wandering around until he stumbled into a room with an IS unit inside. Out of curiosity, he touched it, and to everyone's shock, it activated. Moments later, people rushed in and told him he wasn't supposed to be there. Since men aren't supposed to be able to operate as units, they were stunned when they realized the machine had responded to him. A lot happened after that, and eventually, Ichika was admitted to Infinite Stratos Academy. Lingyan was surprised to hear how it all unfolded. Then, out of nowhere, Haoki and Cecilia showed up. They wanted to make sure, was Ichika dating Lingyan? Lingyan was caught off guard, and Ichika quickly explained that they were just childhood friends. He added that Lingyan had transferred away not long after Haoki had left their school. Ichika introduced Haoki to Lingyan, explaining that Haoki was his first childhood friend and Lingyan was the second. That made Haoki genuinely happy. She felt valued by Ichika. Lingyan then greeted Haoki and said she hoped they could get along from now on. Cecilia introduced herself as the representative from the United Kingdom. She also shared that she and Ichika had competed for the position of class representative. Unfortunately, while Cecilia was explaining all this in detail, Lingyan completely ignored her, which made Cecilia visibly annoyed. Instead of responding, Lingyan invited Ichika to train with her. She openly admitted that she wasn't interested in anything Cecilia was saying, which only made Cecilia angrier. At that moment, Haoki stepped in and mentioned that helping Ichika train had become her responsibility. Cecilia responded by saying she didn't need any help from someone from a rival class, but Lingyan said she simply wanted to talk to Ichika and suggested that the two of them should leave together. Cecilia was clearly irritated and called Lingyan arrogant, especially since she had joined later than the rest. However, Lingyan pointed out that she had known Ichika longer than Cecilia had. Not wanting to be outdone, Haoki claimed that she had actually known Ichika the longest and even mentioned that he used to come over to her house for meals. Lingyan then revealed that Ichika had also frequently come to her house for meals back in their grade school days. Haoki and Cecilia immediately turned to Ichika, asking for an explanation. Ichika clarified that he had only eaten at Lingyan's family restaurant. Haoki and Cecilia were relieved to hear that the place he visited was just a restaurant owned by Lingyan's family. Ichika then asked how Lingyan's father was doing, and she said he was doing well. After that, Lingyan said she would see him again after finishing her training and walked away. After school, Ichika trained in Infinite Stratos with Haoki. Haoki had recently been granted permission to use an Infinite Stratos unit for training purposes, and starting that day, she would be the one helping Ichika train. The unit Haoki used was called Uchigen, a mass-produced Japanese model. Cecilia was surprised that Haoki had received approval that easily. Haoki told Ichika to start a long-range battle with her, and he immediately drew his sword. Just then, Cecilia activated her own Infinite Stratos and said that she would be the one to train him instead. The training continued into the evening. After they finished, Ichika felt completely exhausted. Haoki remarked that it was no surprise since he rarely exercised. Ichika admitted that the fatigue came from having to fight against two people. Haoki then walked off and invited Ichika to head back to the dorms. Ichika asked her to go ahead, as he still couldn't move his body properly. Haoki agreed and left first, mentioning that she needed to shower. Still resting, Ichika thought about how this kind of training would probably continue until the upcoming class battle. Not long after, Lingyan showed up and offered him a sports drink. Ichika hadn't expected her to be waiting for him. Lingyan seemed relieved to have a moment alone with him and asked whether he had felt lonely without her around. Ichika admitted that losing a friend would definitely make him feel lonely, but that wasn't quite what Lingyan meant. She thought Ichika might want to talk to her about something deeper, especially since she was a childhood friend who had suddenly come back into his life. Instead, Ichika asked whether she had contacted any of their old middle school friends, saying they would be happy to hear she had returned. That clearly wasn't the response Lingyan was hoping for. Ichika didn't continue the conversation and said he wanted to go back to his room, thinking Haoki was probably done showering. Lingyan then asked what kind of relationship he had with Haoki. Ichika explained that Haoki was his first childhood friend and Lingyan was the second. Confused, Lingyan asked what childhood friends had to do with taking a shower. Ichika explained that he was sharing a room with Haoki because the school couldn't arrange a separate room for him. He added that he was actually thankful to be sharing a room with someone he already knew. Otherwise, he might have had trouble sleeping due to nerves. Hearing this, Lingyan grew quiet. Then, all of a sudden, she asked Haoki to switch rooms with her. Haoki, clearly confused, asked why they needed to switch rooms in the first place. Lingyan was convinced that Haoki would definitely not be comfortable sharing a room with a guy. Haoki admitted that she never said anything like that, especially regarding her situation with Ichika. Lingyan told her not to worry because she and Ichika were childhood friends. Ichika, of course, didn't want to get involved in that matter. Still, Haoki refused to switch rooms and firmly told Lingyan to go back to hers. Lingyan then asked Ichika if he remembered the promise they made back in grade school. Haoki became annoyed because Lingyan ignored what she had just said. She quickly drew her kendo sword toward Lingyan. In response, Lingyan activated part of her arm to block it. Lingyan pointed out that Haoki's strike could have been dangerous if her opponent wasn't protected. Haoki then put her sword away, and Ichika and Lingyan continued discussing the promise they had mentioned earlier. Ichika thought the promise was about Lingyan saying she would cook sweet and sour pork for him every day if he said she was good at cooking. To him, that kind of deal sounded great, like getting treated to food every day, which was perfect for a single guy. Lingyan immediately slapped him and called him rude for forgetting a promise he made to a girl. Ichika was confused about why she was so mad. Lingyan was upset because Ichika misunderstood the meaning of that promise. When Ichika asked her to explain what it actually meant, she couldn't bring herself to say it directly. Instead, she proposed that whoever won the class versus class match next week could ask the loser for one favor. Ichika agreed. If he wanted, she had to tell him what the promise really meant. After that, Lingyan walked away and Haoki looked annoyed at Ichika. That day was the day of the class versus class match. In the first round, Class 1-1, represented by Ichika, would face Class 1-2, represented by Lingyan. Lingyan's Infinite Stratos was called Shenlong, which was a close combat type, similar to Ichika's Byakushiki. Cecilia reminded Ichika not to drop his guard. Haoki told him to stay calm and assured him that if he fought like he did during training, he would win. Before long, Ichika and Lingyan headed to the arena. Right before the match began, Lingyan told Ichika that if he apologized for what happened, she would go easy on him. Ichika refused and told her to just come at him with everything she had. Lingyan warned him that a supposedly invincible is like Byakushiki wasn't truly perfect. With enough power to surpass its shield, someone could injure their opponent without needing to defeat them entirely. Shortly after, the match between Ichika and Lingyan began. That day, an interclass match was being held. In the first round, Ichika represented Class 1-1 and faced off against Lingyan from Class 1-2. Lingyan quickly drew her sword and launched it toward Ichika, but he managed to block the attack. Lingyan praised him for being able to stop her first move. Without wasting a moment, Lingyan duplicated her swords and launched another assault. Ichika did his best to block her attack, pushing himself to the limit, which fired up the crowd with excitement. Haoki was watching from the monitor room alongside Cecilia, Chifuyu, and Maya. Haoki looked genuinely worried about Ichika's condition, while Cecilia seemed confused about what he was doing. She urged him to use the cross-grid turn maneuver that she had taught him earlier. At that moment, Lingyan fused her two swords and spun them around, preparing for another strike. All Ichika could do was wait for the right moment and dodge slightly. Lingyan fired a cannon blast that only grazed him, but before he could react again, she unleashed another shot, which sent Ichika crashing to the ground. Haoki was shocked by the sudden attack. Maya explained that Lingyan had just used a pressure cannon. That weapon gathers compressed air and shoots it out like a bullet. It turned out that Lingyan's Infinite Stratos was a third-generation unit, just like Cecilia's Blue Tears. Ichika tried to get back on his feet, but Lingyan kept firing at him repeatedly. He managed to dodge the incoming shots skillfully, even though the dragon cannon's bullets were invisible to the naked eye. Maya suspected that the cannon didn't have a fixed firing angle, meaning it had almost no blind spots. At that point, Ichika realized he needed to take the offensive or else Lingyan would eventually overpower him. He planned to use the same weapon that Chifuyu had once used. During a previous training session, Ichika had asked if Yukira was the only weapon compatible with Byakushiki. According to Chifuyu, it was all he needed to win. One clean strike would be enough. Ichika had told her not to compare him to a world champion. Chifuyu believed that a beginner like Ichika wouldn't survive a long-range battle. She explained that fighting from a distance meant he had to factor in recoil control, shot trajectory, range estimation, quick stops, absolute rotation, as well as weapon characteristics, air pressure, enemy shield types, and more. Ichika was overwhelmed by how much she listed. Chifuyu had pointed out that Ichika was better off focusing on one thing at a time since he was her younger brother. Back in the match, Ichika planned to launch a shield-breaking attack and believed he could pull it off. He called out to Lingyan and told her that from that moment on, he would fight her seriously. Lingyan looked thrilled to hear that. Ichika took off at full speed, hoping Lingyan would chase him. Meanwhile, Maya, who was still observing the match, suspected that Ichika had a plan. Chifuyu confirmed it, saying he was probably about to use Ignition Boost, something she had taught him herself. Ignition Boost was a surprise maneuver that dramatically increased his speed, allowing him to close the distance with his opponent. If the timing was perfect, he could win the match, but it could only be used once. Lingyan kept attacking, firing shot after shot. Ichika increased his speed to dodge them all. When he finally got close enough, he used the Yukira sword. The attack was powerful enough to damage the arena's shield system and trigger a huge explosion. Everyone watching was stunned, unsure of what just happened. Some even thought it was an earthquake. Haoki looked deeply worried about Ichika. Maya quickly reported that there had been structural damage and that it seemed like someone had breached the protective shield. Chifuyu announced that the match was over and ordered both Lingyan and Ichika to stand down immediately. The crowd panicked and people began running for safety. Ichika didn't understand what was happening. Lingyan contacted him to say the match had been cancelled, and she invited him to return to the base with her. Suddenly, an alert went off. An unidentified Infinite Stratos had locked onto a target, and that target was Ichika. Lingyan panicked and told Ichika to head back while she bought him some time. She urged him to escape right away, but Ichika refused to leave a girl behind in such a dangerous situation. Lingyan told him that she was stronger than he was, so he needed to go. She also said she had no intention of fighting until the end, believing the teachers would arrive soon to take care of the threat. Suddenly, a cannon blast was fired toward Lingyan, but fortunately, Ichika quickly jumped in and saved her. The cannon attack was far more powerful than anything Cecilia had ever launched. Lingyan felt deeply embarrassed because Ichika had lifted her up in his arms and she started hitting him in protest, trying to get him to put her down. Before long, the attack came again. From the explosion emerged an unidentified Infinite Stratos unit. Ichika tried to ask what its intentions were, but there was no response. Shortly after, Maya contacted Ichika, urging him to leave the area immediately. She explained that the teachers were on their way with their own Infinite Stratos units to deal with the situation. However, Ichika refused and said he would hold off the attacker until all the students had evacuated. Maya strongly advised against that, but Ichika insisted. He asked Lingyan to get ready to fight. Still feeling flustered after being carried, Lingyan continued to squirm and demanded that Ichika let her go. The unidentified Infinite Stratos began bombarding them with rapid fire. Lingyan remarked that whoever was piloting it seemed extremely enthusiastic. She then told Ichika to charge at the enemy with Yukihira, while she would provide support. They got ready to execute the plan. The unknown unit aimed at Lingyan, who fired back with her own cannon. The two engaged in an intense exchange, flying higher and higher into the sky. During the battle, Maya kept trying to contact Ichika and Lingyan, but there was no response. Chifuyu, observing the situation, told Maya to leave them be. After all, they had volunteered to fight. Maya wondered if Chifuyu wasn't worried, but Chifuyu calmly advised her to stay composed and have some coffee. As she stirred her cup, she accidentally added salt instead of sugar. Maya, Haoki, Cecilia, and Chifuyu continued monitoring the battle from the control room. Seeing how dangerous things looked, Cecilia asked Chifuyu for permission to deploy her Infinite Stratos so she could assist Ichika and Lingyan. But unfortunately, the area's security level had been raised to level 4, and all the doors had been locked. They suspected the unidentified was behind the lockdown, which meant Ichika and Lingyan couldn't escape, and no one could go in to help them. The battle raged on. Ichika took a heavy hit from the unknown unit. Meanwhile, the students inside couldn't get out due to the locked doors. Cecilia suggested contacting the government to declare a state of emergency. Chifuyu told her that it had already been done, and some of the third-year students were currently trying to break through the system. If they managed to override the lockdown, reinforcements could be sent in. Cecilia, feeling helpless, realized all she could do was wait. Chifuyu pointed out that Cecilia wasn't technically suited for backup. Blue Tears was optimized for solo combat against multiple targets. In a team setting, Cecilia could potentially be more of a hindrance than a help. Cecilia was clearly offended by that, but Chifuyu challenged her by asking whether she had ever done any team coordination drills. What was her role in a group strategy? What did her team attacks look like in simulations? What kind of enemy strength had she faced, and how long could she stay active? Cecilia couldn't come up with an answer. Haoki kept watching Ichika's movements on the monitor. At that moment, Lingyan managed to land a hit on the unidentified and Ichika moved in to follow up with a strike. But something was off. He was struggling. Lingyan couldn't understand why Ichika wasn't hitting the target properly, especially since this was the 4th time they had attempted their coordinated attack. By that point, the shield energy of Byakushiki was running dangerously low. Ichika only had enough power left to use his shield-piercing attack one more time. The unidentified Infinite Stratos continued to rain down gunfire on them, and all they could do was dodge. Lingyan said they couldn't beat the opponent without a solid plan. Ichika told Lingyan to run, but she firmly refused. As a national representative, she couldn't just leave him behind. Ichika then asked her to cover him from the rear. Hearing that, Lingyan became flustered and embarrassed, so much so that she almost got hit by an incoming attack. The unknown Infinite Stratos kept firing at them, and the two tried their best to dodge the relentless assault. Suddenly, the machine halted. Ichika suspected that the might be unmanned. At first, Lingyan didn't believe him. But as she thought about it, she realized that the never attacked when they were speaking, almost as if it was listening in on their conversation. Even then, Lingyan was skeptical. To her knowledge, all IS units were designed to be operated by a pilot. An unmanned version shouldn't even exist. Ichika then posed a question. What if the IS really didn't have a pilot? Lingyan asked if he thought he could win in that case. Ichika replied that if it was truly unmanned, then he wouldn't have to hold back. Meanwhile, Hoki tried to break out of the building to help Ichika. At that moment, Ichika considered using his Yukira Type 2's most powerful attack, Riryaku Byakuya. According to him, the weapon was far too strong to be used during training or practice battles. But if he was up against a pilotless IS, then there would be no need to hold back. Unfortunately, Lingyan pointed out that none of Ichika's attacks had landed so far. Ichika promised that this time his strike would hit its target. He asked Lingyan to fire her cannon at full power toward the enemy once he gave the signal. Just as Ichika was about to move, Haoki suddenly shouted for him to defeat the machine. The unknown IS immediately turned its attention to her and began charging its weapon. Ichika quickly told Haoki to run and at the same time instructed Lingyan to carry out their plan. He then asked Lingyan to shoot at him. When her cannon fired in his direction, Ichika absorbed the transformation energy and dashed forward, unleashing a full-powered slash at the IS. He did it for Chifuryu, Haoki, Lingyan, and everyone at the IS Academy. His attack landed successfully, but Ichika was hit hard in the process. As the enemy machine began to weaken, it slowly approached the unconscious Ichika lying on the ground. Just as it got close, a long-range shot blasted it away. It was Cecilia. Haoki was shocked. She hadn't even realized Cecilia had arrived. Ichika asked Cecilia to finish it off. With her long-range attack, she managed to take it down. Ichika told her he knew she could do it, and Cecilia's face turned red with embarrassment after hearing his praise. Suddenly, an alert blared. The enemy was reactivating. The IS stood back up and aimed its weapon again. Without hesitation, Ichika charged forward to strike it head-on. After the battle, Ichika lost consciousness and was taken to the student infirmary. Lingyan stayed by his side. While sitting next to him, she leaned in slowly, about to kiss him. But just as she got close, Ichika suddenly opened his eyes, surprising her and stopping her in her tracks. He asked why she was there and why she looked so flustered. Embarrassed, Lingyan denied being panicked. Ichika then asked about the unknown IS. Lingyan told him that it was no longer moving and reassured him that he was the only one injured. Suddenly, Ichika brought up a memory. They once talked about sweet and sour pork at sunset. Back then, Lingyan told him that if she ever became a great cook, she wanted him to eat her sweet and sour pork every single day. Ichika then asked what she really meant by that. He had honestly thought she was just offering him free food. Lingyan was surprised and mentioned that someone could get better at cooking if there was someone willing to eat their food. Ichika admitted that he wanted to try Lingyan's cooking, saying that her food tasted really good and he would love to eat it again. Lingyan then told him that her family's restaurant no longer existed. It turned out her parents had divorced, and that was the reason she had to return to China. Out of nowhere, Ichika invited Lingyan to hang out with him sometime. Lingyan began to wonder if he was asking her out on a date. Just then, Cecilia entered the student infirmary to check on Ichika. As soon as she saw Lingyan there, she got annoyed and reminded her that they had agreed not to make any moves on him until he was out of bed. Not long after, Hoki arrived as well, saying that Cecilia had cut in line before her. Lingyan, clearly irritated, told both of them to leave, saying that Ichika was her childhood friend. Despite that, they continued arguing over him. Ichika then asked where Chifuryu was. None of them knew, even though she had been with them earlier. Meanwhile, Chifuryu and Maya were investigating an unidentified Infinite Stratos unit that had been detected without a pilot. Its core hadn't been registered. There were only 467 known cores in the world, but this unit wasn't among them. Maya couldn't understand how that was even possible. That day, Ichika was hanging out with Don and told him that he was currently attending a school where all the students were girls. Don figured that must be pretty fun. Ichika said he was really glad that Lingyan had also enrolled in the same school, since it gave him someone to talk to. He admitted that it was tough not having anyone to chat with most of the time. Not long after, Don's younger sister Ron walked in to let him know that lunch was ready. She was surprised to see Ichika in Don's room, and Ichika greeted her casually. Ron quickly adjusted her clothes, clearly unaware that Ichika was there. Since Ichika had a day off from school, he had stopped by Don's place after returning home. Don reminded Ron to knock before entering someone else's room. Ron quickly told her older brother to stop talking so carelessly in front of Ichika. That day, Ichika ended up eating at Don's family restaurant. Ron encouraged him not to feel shy around her. Ichika noticed that Ron was dressed quite neatly and asked if she was heading out, maybe even going on a date, but Ron quickly denied it. Seeing how casual Ichika was, Don guessed that he probably acted the same way at school and felt kind of sorry for Lingyan. Later that evening, back at the dorm, Maya came to visit the room Ichika shared with Haoki. She informed them that room arrangements had been finalized and that Hoki would need to move out. Haoki was surprised and asked if she had to move immediately. Maya explained that the school couldn't allow male and female students to stay in the same room for that long, and she also believed that there was no way they had been able to relax the entire time. Ichika told Haoki not to worry about him. He even commented with a grin that waking up without her in the room might actually be refreshing. Hearing that, Haoki looked visibly annoyed and said she was ready to move out right away. Ichika was confused about why she seemed so irritated, but decided not to dwell on it. A short while later, Haoki knocked on Ichika's door. Ichika thought maybe she had left something behind, but it turned out she wanted to talk to him about an upcoming one-on-one match. She told Ichika that if she won the match, she'd take him somewhere afterward. Unexpectedly, Nagi, Hane, and Yuko overheard the conversation and were thrilled by the news, thinking it would become the talk of the school. The next day, students in class were buzzing about the rumored one-on-one match happening next month, where the winner would supposedly get to go on a date with Ichika. Somehow, the story had gotten twisted, and it was no longer accurate. Yuko and Nagi were confused about how it had spread like that. That morning, Ichika entered the classroom and asked his classmates what rumors they were talking about, but no one wanted to tell him. A few moments later, Chifuyu entered the room to begin the lesson. Maya then announced that a new transfer student would be joining their class that day. Soon, a student entered and introduced himself at the front of the class. He said his name was Charles, and that he had come from France. He mentioned hearing that there was a guy at this school who looked just like him, so he decided to enroll at Infinite Stratos. The whole class erupted in excitement because another male student had joined them. Chifuyu quickly calmed everyone down and announced that Class 1-1 would be training with Class 1-2 that day. She told them all to change clothes and gather at the second field. She also asked Ichika to look after Charles. Charles greeted Ichika and introduced himself properly, but Ichika didn't respond right away because he was in a rush to get ready. He grabbed Charles by the hand and led him out of the classroom so the girls could change clothes. Ichika brought him to the locker room and was confused when Charles seemed to be shivering slightly. Suddenly, some of the girls blocked their way, clearly excited and impressed by both Ichika and Charles. Ichika quickly told Charles they needed to run. Charles was confused about why everyone was acting so wild, so Ichika explained that the reason was simple. He and Charles were the only boys in the entire Infinite Stratos school. They managed to make it to the locker room, and Charles apologized for being a hassle on his first day. But Ichika told him not to worry about it and actually thanked him. Having another guy around meant a lot, and Ichika hoped they could get along well. He then properly introduced himself to Charles. Before they knew it, they were almost late. Ichika quickly started changing clothes. As he took off his shirt, Charles immediately turned away and covered his face in surprise. Ichika asked Charles to change clothes quickly since their supervising teacher was very strict about being on time. Charles looked nervous and asked Ichika to turn around while she changed. Ichika was a bit puzzled about how Charles could change so quickly. He mentioned that he often had trouble wearing that kind of outfit because it was too tight and could get stuck. Charles's face turned red when she heard that. Ichika noted that her outfit looked really comfortable, and it turned out to be from the Duno Corporation, which belonged to her family. Her father was the director of that company, and according to her, it was probably the biggest Infinite Stratos manufacturer in France. Ichika wasn't surprised. Her refined aura and well-mannered behavior made sense if she was the daughter of a company director. Once all the students had gathered on the field, Chifuyu began the training session. First up was a demonstration battle. Chifuyu called on Lingyan and Cecilia to step forward since both of them had their own personal Infinite Stratos units that were ready to deploy. In truth, neither of them enjoyed being the center of attention, but Chifuyu encouraged them to show some energy since this was their chance to show off in front of the whole class. That immediately lit fire under them. They got excited and were ready to go. Cecilia and Lingyan were eager to fight each other, but to their surprise, their opponent turned out to be Maya. Suddenly, Maya activated her Infinite Stratos and accidentally fell from a height, landing on Ichika. Ichika ended up on top of her, and his hand accidentally touched her chest. Maya reminded Ichika that this wasn't something he should be doing, but if it kept happening, then Chifuyu would become her sister-in-law, and that wouldn't be too bad. Ichika quickly pulled his hand away, clearly flustered. Right after that, an energy blast from Cecilia nearly hit him. It turned out she had fired on purpose, clearly annoyed by what had just happened. Lingyan wasn't happy either. She threw both her swords at Ichika, but fortunately, Maya shot them down in time. She asked if Ichika was okay, and he thanked her for saving him. Chifuyu then explained to the students that Maya used to be a candidate to represent her country, and for her, dealing with attacks like that was nothing. Maya humbly stated that she was just a former candidate, nothing more. Chifuyu then instructed them to begin the match. Cecilia asked whether the battle would really be a 2-on-1 fight, and Lingyan expressed her concern too. Chifuyu reassured them not to worry. If Maya was using her full strength, they would likely lose regardless. Tralek gave the signal, and the battle began. Cecilia fired a series of shots at Maya, but she easily dodged them. Lingyan launched a cannon blast, but again, Maya avoided the explosion effortlessly. Meanwhile, Chief Ryu asked Charles to explain Maya's Infinite Stratos unit to the rest of the students. Charles explained that Maya was using the Rafale Revive developed by the Duno Corporation. It was one of the best second-generation Infinite Stratos units and could hold its own even against early third-generation models. Among the mass-produced units at the time, it was the most advanced and ranked as the third best-selling model. It was also highly versatile, capable of handling close-range combat, long-range attacks, and defense. Back in the fight, Maya continued to fire at Cecilia, who tried her best to dodge. In doing so, she ended up colliding with Lingyan. When the two of them were close together, Maya seized the opportunity and shot them both, knocking them out of the air. Cecilia was in disbelief as she had lost. She and Lingyan began blaming each other for the defeat. Chief Ryu stepped in and told them to show some respect to Maya, now that they had seen just how strong she really was. Afterward, Chief Ryu instructed the students to start training in groups, but leaders of each group would be the students who owned personal Infinite Stratos units. She asked them all to split up and form their groups. The students quickly moved to organize themselves. Lingyan reminded her group members to be careful and not to touch things recklessly, as someone might get hurt. Cecilia asked her group to board one at a time. Meanwhile, Haoki, who had secretly wanted to join Ichika's group, found herself annoyed by the fact that she was considered an elite even in moments like this. Ichika directed his group members to board in order, following their number sequence. The first in line was Kyoka, a girl from the handball club. She shared that she enjoyed watching sports and jogging. As she reached out to shake hands with Ichika, the rest of the group started to feel jealous. They quickly crowded around and offered to shake his hand too, all saying they had liked him since the first time they met. Apparently, Charles had experienced the same situation before as well. Kyoko was wearing her Infinite Stratos suit and tried walking slowly. She admitted that the training made her heart race. Ichika called the next person, and Haoki stepped forward, saying that she couldn't climb up to the control unit. Maya asked Ichika to help Haoki use Byakushiki get her up there. Without hesitation, Ichika lifted Haoki and carried her up princess style. It was her first time being carried like that. Ichika asked her to activate the Infinite Stratos and start using it. Out of nowhere, Haoki asked whether Ichika had any plans during lunch. She then asked if they could eat together, and Ichika agreed. Unfortunately, the lunch Haoki had dreamed of sharing alone with Ichika turned out to be a group lunch with Charles, Cecilia, and Lingyan. Ichika felt that it would be more fun to eat together, especially since Charles had just transferred and still didn't know much about the school. Ichika, Cecilia, and Lingyan exchanged intense stares. Charles began to feel awkward being there with all of them, but Ichika reassured him that it was fine since they were both guys and also roommates. Charles thanked him, and Lingyan was curious why Ichika seemed flustered. At that moment, Lingyan brought out some sweet and sour pork she had made herself. She explained that she prepared it earlier that morning because Ichika had said he really wanted to try her cooking. Cecilia chimed in, saying she also woke up early to prepare something. She had made sandwiches, hoping to show that British food could taste great too. Ichika tried the sandwich first, but it seemed like he didn't quite enjoy the taste. He then turned his attention to Haoki's lunch. Haoki's bento looked luxurious. She admitted she had prepared it with care, originally intending to eat it by herself. Ichika tasted it and found it delicious, certain that she had put a lot of effort into making it. Haoki smiled and revealed that the dish was seasoned with ginger, soy sauce, grated onion, a bit of pepper, and a secret ingredient, grated radish. Ichika was clearly impressed by the flavor, and Cecilia and Lingyan started to look annoyed. Ichika asked why Haoki wasn't eating, and she told him that she had already eaten the failed batch. Seeing how happy she was that Ichika liked her cooking, he offered her a bite, feeding her directly. Haoki's face turned bright red as she accepted the bite. She admitted it was really good, though it wasn't just about the karage. Charles then commented that what they just did looked like something couples do, feeding each other. She said the two of them looked very close. Lingyan and Cecilia didn't seem too happy to hear that. Charles then suggested that they all share their lunches and feed each other, saying there was nothing wrong with that. Ichika agreed, and so did Lingyan. Cecilia, although usually opposed to anything outside of proper table manners, said she should probably follow Japanese customs in this case. Lingyan then offered her sweet and sour pork to Ichika, and Cecilia also moved to feed him her sandwich. Later that night, Ichika and Charles were chatting in their room. Charles asked why Ichika trained with the Infinite Stratos after school. Ichika explained that he needed the extra practice because he had fallen behind the others. Charles said she wanted to join in as well, especially since she had her own personal Infinite Stratos and could possibly be of help. Ichika happily agreed. The next day at school, Maya brought more exciting news. Another transfer student had joined Class 1-1. This new student was from Germany and her name was Laura. The class was surprised since it was the second day in a row they had a transfer student. Maya asked everyone to stay calm because Laura hadn't finished introducing herself yet. Chifuyu then asked Laura to introduce herself properly. Laura addressed Chifuyu as coach, which led Ichika to guess that she must have known Chifuyu from her time in Germany. After her brief introduction, Laura suddenly slapped Ichika across the face, shocking the entire class. She then stated that she refused to acknowledge Ichika as Chifuyu's younger brother. As usual after school, Ichika was training with his Infinite Stratos. That day, he was practicing together with Haoki, Cecilia, and Lingyan. Haoki taught Ichika how to properly attack using a sword. Lingyan guided him to understand the essence of Infinite Stratos by feeling it, while Cecilia gave him instructions on defense and evasion. But all of their explanations only left Ichika feeling confused. He didn't understand any of it. The girls were puzzled as to why Ichika couldn't grasp the basics. Not long after, Charles arrived with her own Infinite Stratos and invited Ichika for a practice match. Ichika agreed. Their match quickly caught the attention of other students who gathered to watch. Charles was piloting Raphael Revive, a second-generation Infinite Stratos from France. As the match began, Ichika immediately drew Yukihira. Charles launched into the air and began firing down at him from above. The students were amazed by the intensity of the battle. Haoki looked especially worried about Ichika. He tried to fight back, but Charles dodged his attack and countered, repeatedly targeting him until Byakushiki's shield energy was completely depleted. After the match, Charles explained that Ichika had lost because he still wasn't capable of long-range attacks. She asked if Byakushiki didn't come with an equalizer. Ichika replied that all of Byakushiki's bus slots were already occupied. Charles pointed out that this setup allocated more power to his one-off ability. The one-off ability is a feature that activates when the Infinite Stratos and its pilot are in perfect sync. In the case of Byakushiki, that ability is called Reiryakubakia. Ichika said Charles' explanation was the first one that actually made sense to him. At that moment, Haoki, Lingyan, and Cecilia were watching from a distance and clearly annoyed. None of them could believe that Ichika only understood things when Charles explained them. Ichika thought the Reiryakubakia was a wild move, especially since it used up shield energy to launch an attack. Charles said the ability was similar to the one used by Chifuyu's Infinite Stratos. But just because Ichika and Chifuyu were siblings didn't mean he could master that kind of power without serious effort. Charles then offered to help Ichika train for long-range shooting. Ichika was hesitant, saying he probably couldn't use someone else's equipment. But Charles clarified that if the original owner disabled the safety lock, then any registered pilot could use it. She helped Ichika aim by guiding his arm, and their close proximity made Haoki, Lingyan, and Cecilia visibly irritated. Charles continued helping him aim at a few targets in front of them. She then asked Ichika what he thought about this way of practicing. Ichika said the movements were really fast. Suddenly, Laura appeared piloting a third-generation German Infinite Stratos model that was reportedly still in the experimental stage. Lingyan looked frustrated by Laura's presence. After all, Laura had slapped Ichika in class not long ago. Without warning, Laura challenged Ichika to a fight. Ichika declined, saying he had no reason to battle her. But Laura insisted that she had her own reasons. Ichika suggested she wait, since there was going to be an inter-class match soon anyway. Ignoring his words, Laura fired a sudden shot at Ichika. Charles quickly moved in and shielded him. Charlotte commented that the German girl seemed to have a short temper for attacking so suddenly. Charles immediately raised her weapon toward Laura. Laura arrogantly dismissed the French-made second-generation Infinite Stratos, belittling its capabilities. Charles, however, confidently defended her machine, saying it was far more practical than a third-generation German unit that might never be ready for mass production. Just as the confrontation escalated, Chifuyu stepped in and sternly reprimanded the students. Laura backed off and left for the day. Still curious, Haoki asked Ichika what had just happened. Meanwhile, Cecilia asked Ichika what kind of relationship he actually had with Laura. In the locker room, Charles approached Ichika and asked if he was okay. Ichika thanked Charles for helping him earlier. Charles was about to head back to the room first, and Ichika asked why he did not just take a shower there. He also pointed out that Charles had never changed clothes with him before, which made him curious. Charles tried to avoid the topic, but Ichika grabbed his arm and even wrapped his arm around him. Ichika said he wished Charles would occasionally change clothes with him, but that made Charles nervous and uncomfortable. Charles suddenly shouted and ran off. Ichika was left confused, not understanding why Charles reacted that way. After changing his clothes, Ichika walked to his room, still thinking about when Laura slapped him and said she refused to acknowledge him as Chifuyu's younger brother. As he approached, he overheard Laura talking to Chifuyu, asking what she was doing in a place like that. Chifuyu explained that she had a duty to fulfill. Curious, Ichika quickly hid so he could listen in. Laura questioned what kind of duty Chifuyu could possibly have on that eastern island. She pleaded with Chifuyu to return to training in Germany. From Laura's perspective, not even half of Chifuyu's abilities were being put to proper use at the school. She felt that the students there were not worthy of Chifuyu's guidance, claiming that they lacked awareness about Infinite Stratos and treated it more like a fashion statement than something serious. To Laura, Chifuyu was wasting her time. Chifuyu asked her not to say such things again. She told Laura that she had become someone important to her, especially since they had not seen each other for a while. Then she asked if Laura had ever thought of herself as someone chosen at the age of 15. Laura was surprised to hear Chifuyu say that. Chifuyu then told her to go back to class, and Laura ran off. Unexpectedly, Chifuyu had actually noticed Ichika's presence. She said she did not approve of his habit of eavesdropping. Ichika was confused by the way his sister treated him. Chifuyu told him he should spend his free time training because with the way things were going, she was sure he would lose in the first round of the upcoming end-of-month tournament. Before she left, Ichika asked whether Laura's refusal to recognize him as her younger brother was because Chifuyu had lost her chance to win a second championship because of him. Chifuyu told him that it was in the past and there was no need to dwell on it. She then walked away. There was a past event on the day of the second Mondo Grosso Finals, the World Championship for Infinite Stratos. Ichika had been kidnapped by someone. He did not know what the kidnappers wanted from him. He was tied up and held captive. Chifuyu came to rescue him even though it meant leaving the final match. As a result, she was disqualified. She had been the undeniable favorite to win the tournament 2 years in a row, so her sudden loss caused a major uproar. To repay the German military unit that had given her Ichika's location, Chifuyu worked as a trainer for the German Infinite Stratos forces for 1 year. Ichika realized that all of this happened because of his own weakness. He felt ashamed for being such a burden as a younger brother. He thought maybe it was time he stopped relying on Chifuyu all the time. Ichika arrived at the room while Charles was in the shower. Realizing the soap was out, he decided to bring her some. Without thinking, he opened the bathroom door. Charles was, of course, shocked to see him. She quickly covered herself. Ichika noticed that her body looked more like a woman's. Charles was extremely embarrassed while Ichika quietly handed her the soap. After stepping out, Ichika finally realized what he had seen. Charles was overwhelmed with embarrassment, knowing that Ichika had seen her bare body. After the shower, they both looked awkward sitting in the room until Ichika invited her to have some tea together. He made the tea and handed it to Charles. Their hands accidentally touched and Charles got flustered. In her nervousness, she spilled the tea on Ichika's hand. He cried out in pain and quickly rinsed his hand with cold water. Charles immediately apologized and checked on his hand. As she leaned closer, Ichika pointed out that her chest was pressed against his arm. Charles was stunned and quickly turned around, calling Ichika flirtatious. Ichika, in turn, was confused by her accusation. Afterward, Ichika asked why she was pretending to be a boy. Charles revealed that it was her parents' decision. It was a direct order from the director of Duno. Charles shared that he wasn't born from the official wife of the Duno director. He opened up about having lived apart from the director for several years before being brought into the family 2 years ago. When Charles' mother passed away, staff from the Duno company came to pick him up. After undergoing numerous tests, it turned out that Charles was highly compatible with the Infinite Stratos. That's when he unofficially became a pilot. During all that time, Charles had only met his father twice, and their conversations never lasted more than an hour. Not long after, the Duno company fell into a financial crisis. Ichika was surprised, especially since Duno was known as the world's leading Infinite Stratos manufacturer. But Charles explained that despite their dominance, Revive was still considered a second-generation as model, while the industry's research was already moving toward third-generation technology. According to Charles, the main reason Cecilia and Laura were transferred was for data collection. Duno was also conducting third-generation is research, but it wasn't going well. If things kept going in that direction, the company risked losing its production rights. Ichika then asked how all this related to Charles pretending to be a boy. Charles said it was simply a marketing tactic to draw attention. By pretending to be male, it became easier to get involved in the special case taking place in Japan. Duno believed they could gather valuable data on both the pilot and the IS unit, so the company sent Charles with the hidden mission of collecting data on Ichika. At that moment, Charles felt relieved for finally telling the truth. He thanked Ichika for listening and apologized for deceiving him. Ichika asked whether Charles could truly accept everything that had happened and just let it go. He pointed out that while it's true no one can be born without parents, that doesn't mean parents have the right to do whatever they want with their children. Charles was taken aback by that, especially when Ichika revealed that both he and Chifuyu had been abandoned by their parents. Ichika admitted he had no intention of ever meeting them again. Then he asked what Charles planned to do next. Charles said she would probably be called back to her country now that her secret was exposed, and she wasn't sure what would happen after that. If she was unlucky, she might even end up in jail. Ichika urged her to stay and simply keep everything under wraps. Even if others found out, he believed neither her father nor the company could touch her due to the Infinite Stratos Academy's rules. As long as a student was enrolled there, They were not under the control of any country, corporation, or organization. So essentially, she would be safe for at least 3 years, and during that time, they could figure out what to do next. Charles was amazed that Ichika remembered that part of the school rules, considering there were 55 clauses in total. Ichika admitted he was pretty good at reading books. Charles thanked him again for protecting her. Ichika told her not to feel awkward around him. Just then, Ichika accidentally caught sight of Charles' exposed chest and quietly let her know. Embarrassed, Charles quickly covered herself. She then innocently asked if it caught his attention. Naturally, Ichika admitted it had. To his surprise, Charles teasingly offered to let him take a better look and joked that he was being flirty. Ichika was confused at how quickly she jumped to that conclusion. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. It was Cecilia checking in to ask whether Ichika was feeling okay, as he hadn't eaten anything all day. Without waiting, she stepped into the room and saw Ichika with a blanket wrapped around Charles. Ichika said he was taking care of Charles, who was feeling unwell. Cecilia apologized and asked if she could take Ichika away for a bit since she hadn't had dinner yet. Charles gave them the go-ahead. Without wasting time, Cecilia quickly pulled Ichika along to have dinner with her. Unfortunately, as they were walking through the corridor, they ran into Haoki. She immediately stopped them and asked why they were holding hands and walking so closely. Cecilia replied that it was only natural for a man to guide a lady. Haoki, not wanting to be left out, said she wanted to join them for dinner too, claiming she hadn't eaten enough earlier. Cecilia reminded her that eating too much could lead to weight gain, to which Haoki responded that she would just burn off the calories through her kendo training. Without hesitation, Haoki grabbed Ichika's right hand and insisted he join them both. Ichika had no chance of escaping because both of them playfully pinched him, not letting him go. After dinner, Ichika returned to his room, bringing some food for Charles. Charles thanked him and started eating right away, but was surprised to find that the meal came with chopsticks, something she didn't know how to use. Ichika offered to get her a fork, but Charles stopped him. Ichika told her that sometimes it was okay to rely on others. If she was always too modest or independent, she might miss out on things. He suggested that she start learning to lean on someone, specifically on him. Charles then asked Ichika to feed her. At first, he seemed hesitant, but eventually agreed, since he was the one who told her to rely on him from time to time. Ichika fed Charles, and she looked genuinely happy. Later that night, Laura was at the training arena, lost in thought. She was determined to eliminate Ichika, believing that he had stained Chifuyu's reputation. It was a regular morning in Class 1-1, and a few students were busy chatting about a rumor that had been spreading around. Whoever won the upcoming tournament would get to go on a date with Ichika. Haoki just sat at her desk, quietly observing the conversation. Cecilia asked if Ichika had actually agreed to this arrangement. Yuko explained that Ichika had no idea about it, and it seemed like it was a deal made among the girls themselves. Just then, Ichika and Charles arrived. Charles asked what they were all talking about, but the group quickly dispersed. Lingyan returned to her class, and Cecilia went back to her seat. Ichika, of course, was completely confused about what was going on. Earlier, Haoki had told Ichika that if she won the tournament, she wanted to spend time with him. That's why she was surprised this rumor had started going around. It was supposed to be just her and Ichika, no one else. Determined, Haoki decided she had to win the tournament. That way, there wouldn't be any room for misunderstanding. She reassured herself that things would be different this time, not like before. Back in 4th grade, when she was still in grade school, there had been a national kendo championship. Everyone had expected her to win, but in the end, she couldn't even participate. She lost by default, all because her older sister discovered the Infinite Stratos. The overwhelming power of the Infinite Stratos led to serious concerns over its potential use in warfare. As a result, under the supervision of security agencies, Haoki and her family were constantly relocated, and she ended up living separately from her parents. On top of that, Fabana, her older sister, disappeared. Haoki found herself under constant surveillance, repeatedly interviewed, and emotionally exhausted from the whole ordeal. Still, she kept training in kendo. To her, kendo was the one thing that made her feel connected to Ichika. But one day, she realized that she had become someone she didn't want to be. It turned out she had been using kendo as a way to vent her stress. Haoki came to understand that calling herself strong while using violence as an outlet didn't represent true strength. That wasn't the kind of strength she wanted to have. She began to wonder if she could still win, without misunderstanding what strength truly meant, and she made up her mind she had to do it for her own sake. Later that afternoon, Lingyan arrived at the training arena. Not long after, Cecilia showed up as well. Lingyan said she was there to practice for the upcoming tournament, and Cecilia admitted she had the same idea. Lingyan challenged her to see which of them was stronger. Cecilia didn't back down. Lingyan arrogantly claimed that everyone already knew she was stronger than Cecilia. Cecilia smiled calmly and said that the weaker the dog, the louder it barks, and to her, Lingyan's overly confident behavior seemed to fit that saying perfectly. Annoyed, Lingyan activated her Infinite Stratos. Cecilia immediately did the same. But just as they were about to start their match, a sudden explosion was fired in their direction, catching both of them off guard. It was Laura. She had launched the attack. Laura was using Germany's third-generation Infinite Stratos unit, Schwarzer-Rogan. Lingyan shouted at her, asking what she was thinking by firing at them like that. Laura smugly remarked that Shenlong from China and Blue Tears from the UK looked much better in person than they did in the pictures. Lingyan, angered, challenged her and called her a masochist. Laura dismissed both Cecilia and Lingyan without a second thought. She even insulted their home countries, saying they were only known for their large populations and historical lack of talent. This infuriated both girls. Laura then asked why the two of them didn't just attack her together. She was confident she wouldn't lose to a pair of losers fighting over a breeding dog. Cecilia and Lingyan were even more upset now that Laura had insulted Ichika. Fueled by frustration, they charged at her together. At that moment, Ichika and Charles were walking toward the training area when they overheard other students mentioning that the representatives of 3 countries were currently training at Arena 3. Shocked, they rushed over. Shortly afterward, Hoki arrived too, curious about what was going on. Ichika had no idea what Cecilia, Lingyan, and Laura were even doing. The battle raged on. Lingyan launched her Ryuhao attack, but Laura confidently said it was useless. Ryuhao couldn't penetrate the electric shield of Schwarzer-Rogan. Laura managed to stop Ryuhao's attack from Lingyan using her AIC. AIC, which stands for Active Inertial Canceller, is a third-generation weapon from Schwarzer-Rogan, also known as the Inertial Arrest ability. At that moment, Lingyan kept firing, but Laura easily neutralized her attacks. Lingyan couldn't believe her weapon was ineffective against Laura. Laura then extended a rope to trap Lingyan with ease, and she wondered why Lingyan's Infinite Stratos was considered a third-generation model. Cecilia immediately fired at Laura, who tried to dodge. Both of them exchanged shots, but unexpectedly, Laura threw Lingyan, still caught in the rope, towards Cecilia, causing both of them to fall. Laura approached them as Lingyan attempted to fire a cannon at her, but Laura shot first. Seeing this, Cecilia launched a missile at Laura, resulting in a big explosion. Lingyan called Cecilia reckless for firing a missile from such close range. Cecilia guessed that Laura must have been hurt. Surprisingly, Laura wasn't affected by the blast, and it was her turn to counterattack. Laura trapped both Lingyan and Cecilia's necks with her rope weapon and then hit them hard. They couldn't fight back because they were restrained. The attack was fierce, and there was even a warning that the force had exceeded the safety limit for their well-being. Seeing this, Charles became worried since Lingyan and Cecilia's shield energy wouldn't hold much longer. Haoki said if the damage kept increasing and their Infinite Stratos were forcibly shut down, their lives could be in danger. At that time, Laura continued to strike the helpless Lingyan and Cecilia. Haoki was reminded of a past kendo match where power was used irresponsibly. Ichika tapped the arena's protective barrier and asked Laura to stop fighting, but Laura just smiled. Ichika immediately activated his Infinite Stratos, broke the arena's shield, and drew his weapon to attack Laura. However, Laura stopped him easily, and Ichika found that he couldn't move his Infinite Stratos at all. Then Lingyan and Cecilia's Infinite Stratos disappeared, and both of them collapsed exhausted. Laura called Ichika foolish because his moves were predictable and emotional. To her, Ichika wasn't a match since he was nothing more than an insignificant little person in front of her and Schwarzer-Rogan. Just as Laura was about to shoot him, Charles rained down gunfire from above, continuously attacking Laura. Meanwhile, Ichika quickly took Cecilia and Lingyan to a safer spot. At that point, the shield energy of Byakushiki started to fade, and Laura aimed to shoot again. Fortunately, Ichika managed to use Ignition Boost just as Laura fired, causing her shot to miss. Charles didn't stop bombarding Laura with gunfire. Ichika laid Cecilia and Lingyan at the edge of the arena, and Cecilia admitted that she and Lingyan had done something embarrassing. Ichika was relieved because they were now conscious. Haoki couldn't do anything since she didn't have her own Infinite Stratos. At that moment, Charles got caught in Laura's rope, and Laura was about to attack Charles with her sword. Luckily, Shifuyu stopped her with her kendo. Shifuyu allowed the duel to continue but said she couldn't allow anything that would destroy the arena's protective barrier. She asked everyone to settle a fight in the upcoming inter-class tournament. They all agreed to follow Shifuyu's order. Shifuyu then banned all fights until the inter-class tournament began. After that, Cecilia and Lingyan were taken to the school's student infirmary. Lingyan said that Ichika didn't really have to save her, and Cecilia even mentioned that if the fight had continued, she and Lingyan would have won. Charles came by with some drinks and asked both of them not to try to act tough. Charles believed that they were just embarrassed because they had messed up in front of the people they liked, and of course, neither of them wanted to admit it. Ichika asked why they had fought with Laura. Hearing that question, they were so surprised that they almost choked. Cecilia said that Laura had hurt women's pride. Charles then asked if Laura had insulted Ichika, but Cecilia and Lingyan immediately covered Charles' mouth to stop him from saying anything else. Ichika told Cecilia and Lingyan not to move too much since they were injured. He gently touched their shoulders, and as expected, it caused them pain. Ichika asked them again not to act tough. Cecilia and Lingyan called Ichika stupid, but he didn't understand why they behaved that way toward him. Before long, some students came into the infirmary holding a notice that said for the upcoming class tournament, to make the battle simulation more realistic, students had to compete in pairs. Those who didn't choose their own partners would be assigned partners by lottery. Everyone wanted Ichika to be their partner. Ichika apologized because he had already teamed up with Charles. The students then left one by one. Ichika felt relieved, but then Lingyan asked him to be her partner because they had been friends since childhood. Cecilia forbade it, saying Lingyan should choose someone from her own class. Suddenly, Maya said that she couldn't allow Cecilia and Lingyan to participate in the tournament because the damage to their Infinite Stratos suits was beyond grade C. Cecilia and Lingyan couldn't accept this easily, but Maya insisted that they still couldn't join because their Infinite Stratos suits needed full repairs, and if not, it could cause serious malfunctions later on. They all thought about spoiling the competition that allowed the winner to date Ichika. So they encouraged Ichika and Charles to win the tournament because if Ichika and Charles won, no one else could date Ichika. Ichika and Charles thanked Cecilia and Lingyan for their support. Maya was even moved by their beautiful friendship. That night, as Ichika and Charles were about to return to their room, Charles thanked Ichika for choosing him as a partner, saying it made him happy. Ichika said it would be dangerous if Charles partnered with someone else and his true identity as a girl was discovered. Charles was touched by how much Ichika cared about him. When they got to their room, Ichika asked Charles not to talk like a guy when they were alone. Charles explained that before coming to school, he had been trained to speak and act like a man to keep his secret, so it wasn't easy to switch back, but if Ichika didn't like it, he would try to speak more like a girl when they were alone. Ichika told him not to force himself and even said that Charles looked cute when acting like a guy. Hearing that, Charles was deeply moved. Ichika stepped out for a moment because Charles was changing clothes, but Charles asked him not to leave because he didn't mind Ichika being in the room while he changed. Besides, it would be awkward if Ichika was outside since other boys were changing, so they stood back to back while changing. After they took off their clothes, Charles suddenly screamed because he twisted his ankle and fell down hard. Ichika looked over, and they both stared at each other awkwardly. Ichika immediately jumped to help him, but accidentally grabbed the back of Charles' clothes, and without realizing it, he pulled off Charles' underwear. Charles was shocked and kicked Ichika until he fainted. Charles quickly laid Ichika down on the bed. He didn't expect someone with Ichika's appearance to do something so embarrassing, especially since Ichika could have just asked politely from the start. Charles remembered how Ichika wanted him to stay at school, and it was the first time Charles truly felt needed by someone. Before falling asleep, Charles kissed Ichika on the forehead. The next day was the day of the class tournament. Many VIP guests came to watch the competition between classes at Infinite Stratos High School. The supervisors were there to oversee the third-year students, while the others observed the progress of the second-year students over the past year. At that moment, Ichika and Charles were in the locker room changing clothes. Ichika was curious about who Hoki would be paired with, especially since any student without a partner would be assigned one by a random draw. Charles guessed that what Ichika was really thinking about was competing against Laura. He advised Ichika not to let his emotions cloud his judgment. According to Charles, Laura was the strongest first-year student at that time. When the pairings were announced, Charles and Ichika were surprised to learn that Hoki was teamed up with Laura. Hoki was clearly very upset upon hearing that she had to partner with Laura. She remembered Laura's intense and emotional match from the previous day, which reminded her of her own past experiences in Kendo, a time marked by fierce competition. The interclass tournament at Infinite Stratos High School had officially begun. Unexpectedly, in the first round, Ichika and Charles were matched up against Laura and Hoki. Laura was thrilled. She didn't have to wait long to face Ichika, and the battle was bound to be intense. Ichika immediately drew Yukihira, but Laura easily blocked it using her active inertial canceller. Lingyan and Cecilia had predicted that Laura would use that power, and they believed Ichika should have seen it coming. At that moment, Laura told Ichika that his direct attack was way too predictable. Just as she aimed her weapon at him at close range, Charles launched her rapid switch attack, forcing Laura to dodge quickly. Hoki stepped forward, drawing her sword to engage Charles. Right as Hoki was about to strike, Ichika suddenly appeared and blocked her blade. Then something unexpected happened. Laura grabbed Hoki with her restraint wires and slammed her to the ground. She then charged toward Ichika and began clashing swords with him. Lingyan was convinced that Laura didn't mean to help Hoki at all, and Cecilia was certain Laura simply saw Hoki as a nuisance. Laura kept attacking Ichika while her wires reached out, trying to trap Charles. At that moment, Hoki went after Charles again, swinging her sword, but Charles fired at her repeatedly, forcing her to retreat. Maya, who was monitoring the match with Chifuyu from the control room, suspected that Charles was deliberately trying to take Hoki out of the fight first. Chifuyu agreed, saying it was a smart move since Laura wasn't used to fighting multiple opponents and didn't even consider her own partner as an ally. Maya noted that the coordination between Ichika and Charles was impressive, but to Chifuyu it was just average. Hoki continued to fight Charles, attacking with her sword, but Charles quickly responded with a barrage of shots, eventually depleting Hoki's shield energy and taking her out of the battle. Charles then rushed to support Ichika in his fight against Laura. Ichika felt relieved to have her by his side. He prepared to attack with Reiryaku Bakia, while Charles continued to shoot at Laura. Of course, Laura activated her active inertial canceller to block the attacks. Ichika approached from above, but Laura dodged swiftly and extended her wire weapons to try and catch him. Ichika attempted to counter using Yukihira, but Laura claimed it was useless since her active inertial canceller could block his attack. However, her concentration broke when Charles suddenly appeared in front of her. Ichika and Charles had planned a combo attack after realizing the weakness of the active inertial canceller. It could only be maintained if the user focused on the specific target they wanted to block. Charles kept firing at Laura, forcing her to dodge continuously, while Ichika closed in and tried to land a finishing blow with Yukihira. Unfortunately, Bayakashiki's shield energy was completely drained, leaving Ichika unable to fight. Laura was delighted. It meant Ichika was no longer a threat. She drew her sword to finish him off, but Charles kept firing at her. Irritated by the constant shots, Laura turned her wire weapon toward Charles instead. Charles was knocked down, and Laura moved in to strike Ichika directly. Just as Laura was about to land a final blow on Ichika, Charles suddenly used her ignition boost attack. Laura was stunned. There had been no prior record of Charles having that ability. It was the first time she had ever used it. As Laura tried to activate her active inertial canceller again, Ichika shot her from behind using Charles' rifle. Frustrated and furious, Laura launched her wire attack at Ichika. Charles quickly closed the distance and fired a shield pierce attack at point-blank range. The blast drastically reduced Laura's shield energy and sent her flying. The audience was stunned. Ichika and Charles had actually managed to disable Laura. But it wasn't over. Charles rushed toward Laura and delivered a powerful follow-up strike. Laura cried out, refusing to accept defeat in that match. About Laura's story, Laura was created, born, raised, and trained solely for battle. She was unique, designed to be the best, at least until the invention of the Infinite Stratos weapon system. To maximize her potential, nanomakines were implanted in her eye. However, her body couldn't handle the strain, and she ended up being labeled as a failed product. Things began to change when she met Chifuyu. To Laura, Chifuyu was an incredible instructor. Thanks to Chifuyu's guidance and her role in the Infinite Stratos military force, Laura eventually became one of the strongest members of the unit. She deeply admired Chifuyu, often wondering what made her so powerful and how someone could have such strength while still maintaining a kind expression. Chifuyu became someone Laura deeply respected, someone she saw as strong, honorable, and special. Because of this, Laura couldn't forgive anyone who tried to change Chifuyu, and she refused to accept any version of her that wasn't true to who she really was. During a battle against Ichika and Charles, Laura nearly lost all her strength. In that moment, driven by raw emotion, she kept pushing herself, shouting out as she fought. Her behavior started to worry the audience. Chifuyu instructed Maya to issue a Level D emergency warning. At that point, Laura's body began merging with her Infinite Stratos unit, turning into a massive, out-of-control form. A danger alert was broadcast, and the match was immediately cancelled. Instructors were dispatched right away to handle the situation. Guests and students were told to evacuate the area. As Laura's body continued to grow, Ichika noticed that the monstrous version of her was wielding Yukihira, the same weapon used by Chifuyu. Watching from the control room, Maya commented that this transformation was different from the previous incident that happened on the moon. She was curious about what exactly had happened to Laura. Laura's new form had turned into a giant black Infinite Stratos unit. Ichika stepped forward to try and stop her, but Laura's attack was too powerful and knocked him out of his unit. Her sword strike even injured his arm. Ichika recognized the move. He realized it was the very first sword technique he had learned from Chifuyu. He figured Laura must have been copying Chifuyu's style. As Laura moved in again, Ichika tried to strike back, but Hoki stopped him. He was frustrated because, from his perspective, Laura was the one who started all of this, and he wanted to put an end to it himself. Meanwhile, back in the control room, Maya noticed that Laura had suddenly stopped moving. Chifuyu guessed it was probably an automated defense program that reacted to movement or weapons. Maya wondered what Laura's state of consciousness was like during that moment. Back on the field, Ichika was still trying to break free from Hoki's grasp. To snap him out of it, Hoki slapped him. Ichika then explained that Laura had mimicked one of Chifuyu's sword techniques, a technique that to him belonged only to her. This reminded him of something Chifuyu had taught him long ago. A sword is meant to be wielded, not to wield its user. And the weight he felt wasn't just from the weapon, it was the weight of lives taken by it. Ichika stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. Haoki asked how he planned to fight when his Byakushiki had no energy left. Seeing reinforcements arrive, she told him this situation could be resolved even without him. But Ichika replied that it wasn't about whether he had to do it was because he wanted to. Annoyed, Haoki asked what it was he really wanted to do. Just then, Charles offered to transfer some of her energy to Ichika using the core bypass revive system. After giving him her energy, Charles asked Ichika to promise that he wouldn't lose. He agreed, saying that if he lost, he wouldn't even be worthy of being called a man. Charles smiled and jokingly said that if he did lose, he'd have to wear a girl's uniform to school the next day. At the same time, Chifuyu instructed the other teachers to hold back their attacks because she wanted to give Ichika a chance to resolve the situation himself. Ichika thanked Charles and activated Byakushiki in its limited mode, choosing to summon only Yukihira. Before heading into the fight, Haoki reminded him not to die in this battle. Ichika asked Haoki to trust him and just wait for him because he promised he would win. He stepped forward and activated Raryaku Bakia. With a single strike, he was able to defeat the monster that had taken over Laura. Her body was released from the monstrous form and Ichika caught her just as she was about to collapse. Laura, weak and confused, asked him why he had become so strong and how he managed to gain such power. Ichika told her that he wasn't strong by nature. If he appeared strong, it was only because he had chosen to become strong, because there was something he wanted to do with that strength. He wanted to protect someone. He wanted to fight for others sincerely. That was why he wanted to protect Laura too. Later, Laura woke up in the student infirmary, confused and not understanding what had just happened to her. Chifuyu was sitting next to her bed and explained that there was actually a sensitive issue that needed to be kept confidential. Chifuyu told her that according to the Infinite Stratos Agreement, any use, production, or research involving the Valkyrie Trace system was strictly prohibited. However, the AIS system installed in Laura's unit had been secretly equipped with it. The system had been programmed to activate under certain mental conditions, such as extreme emotional stress, physical damage, and a strong desire to fight. Chifuyu made it clear that Laura didn't need to be anyone else. She wanted Laura to live as herself, and to never try to become another version of Chifuyu again. After Chifuyu left the room, Laura quietly laughed to herself. That night, Charlotte and Ichika were having dinner together in the cafeteria. They talked about how the tournament had been cancelled. From across the room, Naji, Suyuka, and Erika were watching them. They looked disappointed, knowing they had lost their chance to go on a date with Ichika because of the cancellation. They quickly ran off in frustration. At that moment, Haoki was also nearby. Ichika approached her and brought up the promise they had made. He told her he didn't mind keeping her company. Haoki was caught off guard and asked if he was really serious. She wanted to know the reason. Ichika explained that he just wanted to fulfill a request from his childhood friend to go shopping together. Unfortunately, that answer annoyed her, and she kicked him in frustration. Charlotte came over and asked if Ichika had said that on purpose. Not long after, Maya arrived with some good news. She was excited to announce that a new bathing area for male students had just opened on campus. The news made both Ichika and Charlotte feel a little more relaxed and less worried. After dinner, Ichika went to check out the new bath. He sank into the warm water, feeling the stress of the day melt away. A few moments later, Charlotte entered, wrapped in a towel. Ichika was surprised to see her. She shyly asked him not to look her way. Ichika quickly apologized and turned his head away. Charlotte quietly stepped into the bath and sat behind him. Ichika, still surprised, asked why she had come in too. Charlotte asked if he didn't want to bathe with her. Ichika said he didn't mean it like that. She offered to leave if it made him uncomfortable. But Ichika said he would leave instead if one of them had to. Charlotte insisted he stay. There was something important she wanted to talk about. They both stayed in the bath, sitting back to back. Charlotte explained that she had decided to stay at Infinite Stratos Academy just like Ichika had wished. She chose to remain there because he was there too. Ichika was visibly surprised, his face growing tense as Charlotte's hand gently touched his. She said she wanted to be honest with him and show her true self in that moment. Then she turned around and gently hugged Ichika from behind. He became even more flustered. She softly asked him to call her by her real name, Charlotte, but only when it was just the two of them. That name had been given to her by her mother. Hearing this, Ichika nodded and agreed. The next day in Class 1-1, Maya introduced a new transfer student once again. It turned out to be Charles, who reintroduced herself in front of the entire class and revealed her real name, Charlotte Dunois. With that, she no longer pretended to be a boy. Everyone in the class was shocked, although some had already suspected something was off about Charles. It turned out that the sweet boy they had known was actually a sweet girl. The class started questioning Ichika, assuming he must have known the truth, especially since he and Charles had shared the bath the previous day. Just then, Lingyan stormed into Class 1-1 in her Infinite Stratos unit, clearly furious. She was upset that Ichika had been rooming with the girl all this time without telling anyone. Terrified, Ichika panicked as Lingyan aimed her cannon at him. Fortunately, before anything serious happened, Laura stepped in and neutralized Lingyan's attack using her active inertial canceller. Ichika immediately thanked her for saving him. Without saying much, Laura suddenly pulled Ichika in and kissed him right on the lips. Everyone who witnessed it was completely stunned. They didn't expect Laura to act that boldly. Then Laura told Ichika that she wanted him to be her husband and that she had already made up her mind so she wouldn't accept any rejection from him. Naturally, everyone was shocked by Laura's sudden declaration. Even Ichika couldn't quite understand why she had asked him to be her partner. One day, Thabana's phone rang and she picked it up with her usual over-the-top flair. Haoki, who was nearby, didn't want to hear any of it. Thabana quickly told Haoki not to hang up. Haoki greeted her, but Thabana had already guessed what Haoki was going to say. She knew Haoki had been wanting a personal Infinite Stratos unit, and naturally, she had already prepared one for her. Thabana said the personal Infinite Stratos unit she had created for Haoki came with all the best features and was more advanced than any existing one. It was called Akatsubaki. The next morning, Ichika woke up and was shocked to find someone lying next to him. As he pulled back the blanket, he discovered Laura beside him without any clothes on. Laura woke up when she heard Ichika yell. Ichika immediately asked when she had entered his room, and he was even more surprised when the blanket slipped off her body. Ichika quickly covered his face and asked Laura to cover herself right away. Laura responded by saying that she didn't think husbands and wives should hide anything from each other. She had already considered herself his wife. Ichika was puzzled and asked what was going on with her. Laura explained that she had learned Japanese people call the ones they love wife. Ichika was confused and wondered who had told her such misleading information. Then Laura grabbed Ichika's hands and said he needed to improve his relationship skills, and she was even willing to help him learn if he needed it. Just then, Haoki barged into Ichika's room and invited him to do morning training. She was shocked when she saw Laura there, especially since Laura still wasn't dressed. Laura accused Haoki of having no manners for walking into a couple's room like that. That comment immediately set Haoki off. Ichika tried to calm her down, insisting that it wasn't what it looked like. But Haoki, already fuming, unsheathed her kendo sword, ready to teach Ichika a lesson. Later that day, Haoki was riding a train with Charlotte. On the way, she told Charlotte that her morning had started off badly. Charlotte asked why Ichika had only invited her. Apparently, Ichika wanted to buy a swimsuit and knew that Charlotte didn't have a proper one yet, especially with an upcoming beach event. Charlotte thought that reason sounded exactly like what she had expected. At the time, Ichika still called Charlotte by her old alias, Charles, which led her to immediately correct him. She said any guy who played with a girl's heart deserved to be kicked by a horse. Ichika didn't understand why Charlotte suddenly said something so intense, but he actually agreed that guys like that did deserve it. After getting off the train, Ichika was confused by Charlotte's angry expression. Charlotte said she would forgive him if he agreed to hold hands with her. Ichika complied, saying it would be dangerous to get separated in an unfamiliar city, and asked her to hold his hand tightly. Charlotte couldn't believe how oblivious he was to her feelings. Meanwhile, Lingyan and Cecilia had been secretly following them. Lingyan was furious to see Ichika and Charlotte holding hands and activated a small part of her Infinite Stratos unit out of frustration. Unexpectedly, Laura had also been tailing Ichika. Both Lingyan and Cecilia were surprised to see her. Laura explained that she had no intention of hurting Lingyan or Cecilia. However, Cecilia remained suspicious and asked what Laura's intentions really were. Laura simply said she wanted to join Ichika and Charlotte. Lingyan commented that before facing an opponent, it was better to gather information. Cecilia agreed and said they should keep watching Ichika and Charlotte to observe how close they had really become. In the end, Laura, Cecilia, and Lingyan all decided to continue monitoring them. During their outing, Ichika asked Charlotte if she wanted to come up with a new nickname since Charlotte wasn't as special anymore now that everyone knew her real name. He suggested calling her Charl because it was shorter and easier to say. Charlotte was overjoyed to receive a personal nickname from Ichika. Her face lit up so brightly that Ichika felt sure she loved it. Her eyes sparkled at the thought that she might be someone special to Ichika. After that, the two of them continued walking around and checking out different shops. Suddenly, Ichika asked Charlotte to go ahead without him because he needed to buy something else. At the same shopping mall, Da and Ron were also out shopping together. Ron reminded her older brother to be careful not to drop their shopping bags. Dawn commented that Ron had bought way too much stuff. She explained that she was shopping for the upcoming third-year summer event, which she thought was really special. According to her, she needed swimsuits for the pool, the beach, for serious occasions, very serious occasions, and ultra-serious ones, so that everything would be perfectly prepared. Just then, Ichika showed up and greeted them. Ron let out a loud squeal when she saw Ichika suddenly standing right behind her. Don asked if Ichika was shopping too, and Ichika said yes. He then remarked on how much Don had in his hands. Ichika asked if it was all swimwear. Don explained that his little sister had gotten a bit too excited and picked out a bunch of swimsuits to show Ichika. Feeling embarrassed, Ryan quickly gave her brother a light kick. Then she turned to Ichika and asked if he was also shopping for a swimsuit. Ichika told her that his school was going to have a beach event soon. Ron mumbled that if she had known Ichika would be there, she would have asked him to help pick a swimsuit for her. Ryan then mentioned that next year she would be a first year at Ichika's school. She said that Infinite Stratos was her top choice, and she couldn't wait to meet Ichika there. Ichika encouraged her, wishing her the best. As Ron turned around to look for her brother, Charlotte quickly pulled Ichika away and took him elsewhere. Ron was surprised to see Ichika vanish so suddenly. At that moment, Charlotte had taken Ichika to a fitting room in the swimwear store. Ichika asked why she was dragging him there. Charlotte admitted she wanted him to see how she looked in the swimsuit she had picked. Ichika was confused and asked why she brought him into a fitting room. Charlotte told him to stay quiet. She had realized that Lingyan, Cecilia, and Laura had been secretly following them. Meanwhile, the three of them were wandering around, clearly lost and unsure of where Ichika had gone. Cecilia suspected that Ichika and Charlotte might have noticed they were being tailed. Laura, meanwhile, was realizing just how many kinds of swimsuits there were. She overheard some customers talking, saying that if someone bought a plain swimsuit, their boyfriend might not like it. According to them, even if everything else was perfect, wearing a boring swimsuit could be a big mistake. Back inside the fitting room, Charlotte was still keeping an eye out. She knew that once the others found them, they would definitely try to get in her way. She asked Ichika to stay put in the changing room while she quickly tried on the swimsuit. As she began changing, Ichika got startled and quickly turned around. Charlotte seemed unsure of what to do next. Ichika grew more confused, not understanding what Charlotte was really trying to do. He couldn't believe Charlotte was actually getting changed, and he tried hard to push any awkward thoughts out of his head. To distract himself, he started mentally reciting the digits of pi. Not long after, Charlotte finished changing into her swimsuit. Ichika was stunned when he saw how she looked. She asked if the swimsuit looked weird on her. Ichika told her it suited her perfectly. Charlotte smiled and decided to go ahead and buy it. But unexpectedly, their voices were heard by Chifuyu, who happened to be in the store. She opened the fitting room door and found both of them inside. Maya, who was with Chifuyu, was just as surprised to see Ichika and Charlotte together in a changing area. Maya reminded them that even if they were classmates, there were still boundaries to respect, especially between boys and girls. They should not be in the same fitting room. At that moment, Lingyan realized there were teachers nearby and thought this definitely wasn't the right time to show up. She and Cecilia decided to keep watching from a distance. Meanwhile, Laura contacted her teammate Clarissa, who was stationed back at the Schwarzer Hayes base, to report the current situation. Clarissa asked if there was anything Laura needed at the moment. The people around Clarissa at the base were surprised to hear she was on the phone with Laura. Laura told her that she wanted to ask something about Ichika. Clarissa already knew about Ichika. He was Chifuyu's younger brother and also the person Laura had feelings for. Clarissa was actually the one who first came up with the idea of calling Ichika Laura's husband. Laura admitted she had no idea how to choose a swimsuit since there was going to be a beach trip soon and she didn't want to disappoint Ichika. Clarissa asked what kind of swimwear Laura had with her. Laura said she only brought one swimsuit from the academy. Clarissa was shocked and scolded her, saying that the school-issued swimsuit with its outdated style was basically inappropriate. Hearing that, Clarissa's friends praised her for her insight, joking that all the manga and anime she read had paid off. Clarissa decided to help Laura pick a more suitable swimsuit. The next day, the students of Infinite Stratas went to the beach together. Maya reminded everyone to head back to the inn before dinner. Hani invited Ichika to play volleyball, but suddenly, Lingyan jumped onto Ichika's shoulders. Seeing that, the others also wanted to turn sitting on Ichika's shoulders. At that point, Ichika tried to get Lingyan off of him. Not long after, Cecilia arrived and asked what Lingyan was doing on Ichika's shoulders. Lingyan said that Ichika was acting like a moving watchtower. Cecilia reminded Ichika of the promise they made on the bus. She then laid down and asked Ichika to apply sunscreen on her back. In her opinion, a real man wouldn't break a promise he made to a girl, so Ichika reluctantly agreed to help. As soon as Ichika's hand touched her back, Cecilia flinched and asked him to warm up his hands first before applying the sunscreen. Ichika admitted that he had never done anything like that before, so Cecilia forgave him, saying it was his first time anyway. Seeing Ichika applying sunscreen on Cecilia's back made the other girls feel a bit flustered, and they also asked Cecilia if they could borrow some of her sunscreen afterward. After Ichika finished applying sunscreen on her back, Cecilia asked him to help with areas she couldn't reach, like her legs and lower back. But before he could respond, Lingyan jumped in and applied the sunscreen instead. Cecilia burst out laughing because it tickled, and she accidentally yelled when Lingyan touched her lower back. Reflexively, Cecilia turned around to scold Lingyan, and in the process, Ichika accidentally caught a glimpse of her chest. Cecilia, startled, activated a small part of her Is and lightly hit Ichika with it. Later, Ichika swam in the ocean with Lingyan. Lingyan challenged him to a race, and the loser had to treat the winner. She quickly took off, hoping to pull Ichika along with her, determined not to lose to either Laura or Cecilia. But suddenly, her leg cramped up, and she started struggling in the water. As Lingyan began sinking, Ichika quickly rescued her and brought her back to the surface. She felt safe and comforted in Ichika's arms. Ichika carried Lingyan to the shore, and thankfully she was okay. Cecilia offered to take her back to the inn. Even though Lingyan wanted Ichika to take her instead, Cecilia asked Shizune for help, and the two of them dragged Lingyan back to the inn. Lingyan called out for Ichika as she was being taken away, but hearing her energetic voice reassured Ichika that she was probably doing fine. Not long after, Charlotte showed up with a girl wrapped in a towel. Ichika was surprised and asked who the girl was. Charlotte encouraged the girl to show herself to Ichika. When she spoke, it became clear it was Laura. Charlotte gently encouraged her to reveal her swimsuit look to Ichika. At that moment, Laura still felt nervous and was preparing herself. She quickly removed her towel to show her appearance to Ichika. In truth, she felt very shy and lacked confidence, but Ichika surprisingly told her that she looked very cute. Laura never expected Ichika to say something like that. It was the first time anyone had ever called her cute. Yuko and Hane reminded Ichika of his promise to play volleyball together. They played a 3-on-3 volleyball game, where Yuko passed the ball to the opponents, Charlotte sent the ball toward Ichika, and Ichika performed a spike. Luckily, Hane was able to hit the ball back, and then Eriko spiked it toward Laura. However, at that moment, Laura wasn't focused because she was still thinking about what Ichika had said to her. Laura ended up falling after the ball hit her face. Charlotte and Ichika rushed her side to check if she was okay. It turned out that Laura was still blushing because of Ichika's earlier compliment. Her cheeks turned red when Ichika called her name, and she ran to the beach, unable to face him. Ichika was confused and asked Charlotte what was going on with Laura and if they should go after her. Charlotte suggested they let Laura be. Not long after, Maya arrived because she was interested in the beach volleyball game. At that moment, Chifuyu showed up, stunning everyone with her appearance in a swimsuit. Yuko even commented that Chifuyu looked like a model. Maya and Chifuyu decided to join in on the volleyball game. Noticing that Ichika had been staring at Chifuyu for a while, Charlotte asked if Chifuyu was Ichika's ideal type. Ichika quickly denied it. According to Charlotte, Ichika's reaction was quite different compared to when he saw his other friends in swimsuits. Charlotte seemed a little insecure, especially now that Chifuyu had joined the match. Ichika told everyone to be careful because Chifuyu was very strong. They continued to play volleyball together, while Cecilia was still chasing Lingyan, who had run away from the inn. By accident, Lingyan bumped into Chifuyu, which shocked her. Meanwhile, Charlotte was calming Laura, who was still blushing from seeing Ichika. The students enjoyed their time on the beach, having fun and spending time together. In the afternoon, Chifuyu found Haoki alone arranging the beach. Chifuyu asked if there was something bothering Haoki as she had been lost in thought. She wondered if it had something to do with Thabane. Chifuyu mentioned that she had called Thabane the day before, and it turned out that Thabane had nothing to do with Laura's VT system. Chifuyu speculated that Thabane would appear tomorrow on July 7th. Haoki was eagerly anticipating the appearance of the Infinite Stratos created specifically for her, known as Akatsubaki. The students of Infinite Stratos High School went on a school trip to the beach. After soaking in the hot springs that night, they all had dinner together at a Japanese restaurant. Ichika was enjoying his sashimi and mentioned that the real wasabi served there tasted really good. Hearing this, Charlotte quickly ate all the wasabi on her plate, but unexpectedly, it was very spicy. Ichika asked if she was okay. Charlotte felt the sharp, intense spiciness from the wasabi she had eaten. Ichika handed her a drink and told her not to hold back in moments like that. Ichika noticed Cecilia looking uncomfortable sitting cross-legged. He suggested that she switch to a chair if sitting that way was too hard, but Cecilia said she was fine. According to her, that was nothing compared to the effort she had made to get the seat next to Ichika. Ichika caught a faint murmur from Cecilia about her seat, and Charlotte told him that women always have secrets. Ichika looked over at Haoki, wondering why she seemed upset. Seeing Cecilia struggling with the cross-legged position, Ichika offered to feed her. He almost mentioned that he had fed Charlotte before, but Charlotte quickly silenced him. Cecilia was of course happy to hear Ichika wanted to feed her, and she eagerly handed him her chopsticks. Watching Ichika feed Cecilia, the other friends felt a bit jealous, calling Cecilia sneaky for making Ichika feed her. The students became noisy. At that moment, Haoki wondered if Ichika had forgotten that tomorrow was July 7th. Hearing the commotion, Chifuyu appeared and asked everyone to eat quietly. She told Ichika not to cause any more trouble because it was starting to bother her. After Chifuyu left, Cecilia looked a little shy and Ichika whispered to her to just come to his room later. Hearing that, Cecilia's face flushed red. That night, Eriko, Yuko, and Hane looked bored. They had prepared various games to play with Ichika, but it was all useless since Ichika shared a room with Chifuyu. Meanwhile, Cecilia was smiling to herself as she had prepared some special underwear to meet Ichika. Hane, curious, approached Cecilia and exclaimed that Cecilia was wearing very tempting lingerie. Cecilia was immediately startled and embarrassed. Eriko and Yuko then urged Cecilia to take off her outer clothes. They forcibly opened her kimono and saw that her underwear was indeed quite alluring. They called Cecilia a brave and daring girl. Cecilia insisted she was not being bold and that it was just good manners. That night, Cecilia went to Ichika's room to see him, feeling very excited to meet him. Suddenly, Cecilia saw Charlotte, Lingyan, Laura, and Haoki eavesdropping outside Ichika's door. She approached them and asked what they were doing. Lingyan told Cecilia to be quiet and listen to the conversation inside the room. From what they overheard between Chifuyu and Ichika, they suspected something inappropriate was happening. Cecilia was shocked and puzzled, asking what was really going on inside the room. She moved closer to the door, but the door couldn't hold the weight of 5 people and collapsed. It turned out Ichika was giving Chifuyu a massage. Chifuyu was surprised by what the 5 of them were doing. Charlotte said she had just realized that Chifuyu was being massaged. Ichika asked what they had actually thought was happening. Laura nearly blurted out that they assumed Ichika was doing something inappropriate, but her friends quickly stopped her. Chifuyu told them that Ichika was good at massages and suggested they take turns getting massaged by him. Everyone was surprised to hear that. Ichika then asked Cecilia to be the first one he would massage. It turned out that Ichika's invitation for Cecilia to come to his room was actually so he could give her a massage. Cecilia was very happy and immediately lay down on the futon. During the first massage, Cecilia felt a bit of pain, so Ichika softened his touch. The sensation was pleasant enough to make her feel sleepy. Suddenly, Chifuyu lifted Cecilia's shirt and noticed her revealing underwear. Chifuyu thought Cecilia was still too young to wear such mature clothing. Cecilia then asked Chifuyu to take her hand off her shirt. After that, Chifuyu asked Ichika to buy some drinks, then invited the 5 of them to chat together. Chifuyu was surprised to see all 5 of them sitting quietly, apparently feeling awkward since it was their first time talking to her like that. After they drank, Chifuyu asked what they liked about Ichika. She mentioned that Ichika was useful because he could do household chores like cooking and giving massages. She was sure any girl who had Ichika would be lucky. Then Chifuyu asked if any of the 5 girls wanted Ichika. They asked if Chifuyu was going to give Ichika to one of them, but she said no. Instead, she said that if the 5 of them really wanted Ichika, they would have to steal him from her and also work on improving themselves. The next morning, Ichika saw Haoki staring at a wooden board with a sign that said pull. Ichika asked about the board, but Haoki didn't want to answer because she didn't know either, and she walked away. Soon after, Cecilia came over to Ichika. Ichika pulled the object hidden beneath the wooden board, which caused him to fall backward. Suddenly, a large object fell, and inside it was Thabane. Ichika quickly greeted Thabane since they hadn't seen each other in a while. Thabane asked where Haoki was. She said she could locate Haoki using her radar and immediately started searching. Cecilia asked Ichika who the visitor was. Ichika explained that the person was Thabane, Haoki's older sister. Cecilia was surprised to hear this. That afternoon, Chifuyu gathered the students who already owned their personal Infinite Stratos to practice near the river. Lingyan asked if Haoki didn't have her own Infinite Stratos yet. Just as Chifuyu was about to explain, Thabane swooped down toward her. Thabane tried to hug Chifuyu, but Chifuyu gently stopped her. Thabane was so excited because she hadn't seen Haoki in a long time and noticed how much she had grown, especially in the chest area. Hearing this, Haoki immediately swatted her. Chifuyu asked Thabane to introduce herself. Thabane gave her name and proudly claimed to be a genius in front of the students. Charlotte recognized the name Thabane as the brilliant scientist who created the Infinite Stratos. Then Thabane summoned Haoki's personal Infinite Stratos called Akatsubaki. She explained that her model was superior to all other Infinite Stratos units. Akatsubaki was her 4th-generation creation. Everyone was amazed because most countries were only releasing 3rd-generation models. Thabane asked Haoki to get inside her personal Infinite Stratos right away. She said she had already input some of Haoki's data and the rest would be updated with the latest information. Lingyan was impressed by how quickly Thabane uploaded the data. After successfully sensing the data, Thabane told Haoki to start testing the unit. If everything went well, the Infinite Stratos should move exactly as Haoki wanted. Haoki immediately flew up into the air. Lingyan and Charlotte were surprised at how fast the 4th-generation Infinite Stratos was. While Haoki was airborne, Thabane asked her to try using the swords. The sword on the right was called Amaduki. and the one on the left was Caraware. Haoki tested Amaduki, and its power was strong enough to cut through the clouds in the sky. Thabane asked Haoki to try stopping the cannon fire coming from her, and Haoki managed to deflect the shots. Haoki's friends were amazed by the power of that infinite Stratos. Suddenly, Maya arrived at the training site and informed Chifuyu that there was a special mission classified as Level A, and they needed to start figuring out how to handle it. Chifuyu then asked them to stop the trial because there was something important they had to deal with. Maya noticed Thabane and asked who the girl really was. When Chifuyu explained, Maya was surprised. They then headed back to their lodging. It turned out that 2 hours earlier, the third-generation Infinite Stratos developed jointly by the US and Israel had undergone a test near Hawaii. This Infinite Stratos was named Silverio Gospel, but it left the testing area and went out of control. Reportedly, Gospel was outside their radar coverage. According to the data, Gospel was an unmanned Infinite Stratos. After analyzing satellite data, it was confirmed that Gospel would cross the sky about 2 kilometers from their location in about 50 minutes. Following the school's orders, students who own their own personal Infinite Stratos were assigned to handle the situation. Chifuyu explained that the teachers would be monitoring the airspace and sea with training Infinite Stratos. The key to the mission's success was the use of personal Infinite Stratos. Specifically, the students' own machines were tasked with stopping Gospel. Upon hearing this, Ichika was shocked. Chifuyu then invited everyone to develop a strategy. Cecilia asked for specific data on Gospel. Chifuyu was willing to provide it, but warned them not to leak the information because if it got out, they could be prosecuted by surveillance authorities and face at least 2 years of detention. The Infinite Stratos Gospel was a specialized sniper type designed for long-range attacks. It seemed that Gospel could strike from any distance, similar to Cecilia's Blue Tears. Lingyan commented that an Infinite Stratos that focused on blocking attacks and movement would have a hard time with Gospel. Trilla added that it seemed impossible to keep holding back Gospel. Based on the data, it looked like they could not engage in close combat with Gospel. Laura asked if reconnaissance was possible, but Chifuyu said it wasn't because Gospel moved at supersonic speeds even while they were talking. According to Chifuyu, there was only one way. This meant they had no choice but to face Gospel with their strongest Infinite Stratos. Everyone agreed to confront Gospel using Ririako Bakia, as it was their only option. The challenge was how to get Ichika there, since it would be difficult if they didn't save all their energy for that single strike. Laura suggested that they might need an Infinite Stratos fast enough to chase the target, which meant they also needed strong sensors. Ichika then asked if he was the one who had to step forward to face Gospel. All of his friends agreed that he should be the one. Chifuyu told Ichika that this was no longer a training exercise, but a real match, and if Ichika didn't have the will to face it, no one could force him. Hearing that, Ichika said he was willing to do it. Just as Chifuyu was about to select the fastest personal Infinite Stratos, Thabane suddenly appeared from the rooftop and asked them to hold off on the strategy. She jumped down and approached Chifuyu, saying she had thought of a better plan. According to Thabane, this was the perfect moment for Akatsubaki to shine. They immediately resumed testing Akatsubaki, and Haoki activated her personal Infinite Stratos. At that moment, Maya asked Chifuyu whether their superiors knew that Professor Thabane was with them. Chifuyu replied that their superiors were aware and that their top priority was to stop the row of Infinite Stratos. After Haoki activated Akatsubaki, Thabane asked her to open her protective suit. It turned out that the advantage of the 4th generation Infinite Stratos was its ability to expand the protective armor. Akatsubaki could also be called the evolution of Yukira 2. Suddenly, Thabane was reminded of an event involving the White Knight from 10 years ago. 10 years earlier, about a month after Thabane had discovered the Infinite Stratos 2341, missiles from all over the world were hijacked and launched toward Japan. During the global panic, a woman equipped with a silver Infinite Stratos appeared. She was nicknamed the White Knight because she destroyed all the missiles and then vanished toward the sunset as if it had all been an illusion. Thabane admitted that she was curious about who the White Knight really was, but Chifuyu was not curious at all. Thabane tried to mention the White Knight's chest size, but Chifuyu quickly hit her on the head. Thabane felt the pain and joked that her brain had split in two. Chifuyu actually thought it was a good thing because at that moment, Thabane could think more freely. Thabane was delighted and hugged Chifuyu. Chifuyu gently pushed Thabane away and asked how much time Thabane would need to tune Akatsubaki. Suddenly, Cecilia said that she was confident she and Blue Tears would succeed. With the high-mobility equipment, a strike gunner was immediately dispatched to her. Chifuyu asked if the capabilities of that equipment had been proven yet, but it had not. Thabane informed them that she would need about 7 minutes to calibrate Akatsubaki. With that, Chifuyu decided that Ichika and Haoki would be the keys to the mission. They were tasked with chasing and stopping the target. Chifuyu told everyone to get ready because they would start in 30 minutes. At that moment, Haoki and Ichika exchanged glances to encourage and support each other for the mission ahead. Seeing this, Thabane teased Haoki and asked her not to look so glum. Thabane then immediately started tuning Akatsuki, while Ichika reassured himself that he could finish the mission successfully, knowing that only he could deliver the final strike. Meanwhile, Haoki was just beginning to understand what it felt like to have her own infinite Stratos. That day, Ichika and Haoki were assigned to a mission together to face an out-of-control Infinite Stratos pilot called Gospel. When the time came, Ichika activated Byakushiki and Haoki immediately activated her Akatsuki. After that, they flew up into the sky. Ichika mentioned that everything depended on Haoki, and Haoki replied that normally her pride would never allow a man to ride on a woman, but for Ichika, she would make an exception. Before they took off, Ichika reminded her to always be careful because this mission was no longer just a training exercise. Haoki interrupted right away, saying she already knew that and asked Ichika not to worry about her. She promised she would get Ichika through this safely. Ichika noticed Haoki seemed unusually excited and asked if it was because she finally had her own personal Infinite Stratos. Haoki denied it and said she was no different from usual and told Ichika to just focus on the mission. Shifuyu, who was in the control room, reminded them that the key to this mission was for Ichika to defeat the Gospel Infinite Stratos with a single strike, so they needed to finish it as quickly as possible. Their target was an Infinite Stratos named Silverio Gospel, commonly referred to as Gospel. Haoki asked if she could assist Ichika when needed, and Shifuyu allowed it but warned Haoki not to act recklessly since she was inexperienced with controlling Akatsuki, which could lead to problems. Haoki promised she would do her best. At that moment, Lingen thought Haoki seemed a bit arrogant, and Cecilia shared the same impression. Charlotte understood how their friends felt, and after hearing this, Shifuyu asked Maya to open a private channel to Ichika. Then, Shifuyu informed Ichika that she was speaking to him privately and Haoki would not hear their conversation. She suspected Haoki might be getting carried away and worried that in such a state, Haoki could make a mistake. Shifuyu asked Ichika to help Haoki if any danger arose, and Ichika understood. After that, Maya returned to the open channel and asked everyone to prepare, signaling the mission operation to begin. Upon hearing the cue from Shifuyu, Ichika immediately grabbed onto Haoki's shoulder as she took off flying. Ichika was surprised at how fast Akatsuki really was. He praised the power of Akatsuki while Shifuyu and the others continued monitoring from the control room. Charlotte commented that Akatsuki was even faster than Ignition Boost, and Laura was amazed at its speed. Soon, the satellite connected, and the target's location was confirmed. Haoki told Ichika to get ready. When they got close to Gospel, they saw it directly. Haoki accelerated and informed Ichika that they would pass Gospel in 10 seconds. Ichika activated Yukihira, but unfortunately, when he tried to slash, Gospel dodged. They kept chasing Gospel, but suddenly, Gospel started firing a barrage of shots at them. After dodging, Ichika suggested they attack Gospel from two sides at the same time. Ichika asked Haoki to attack from the left side. Haoki quickly drew her two swords. They kept chasing Gospel, but it wasn't easy to attack because Gospel moved fast and kept bombarding them with many shots. Ichika and Haoki worked hard to avoid the attacks. Haoki told Ichika she would try to restrict Gospel's movement. She launched 2 attacks from her legion, and luckily one hit Gospel. Seeing Gospel stagger, Haoki immediately slashed her sword at him. After that, Haoki signaled Ichika to perform the Reryaku Bakuya attack. However, at that moment, Ichika noticed a naval ship directly below the water. He passed by Haoki and Gospel without attacking. Haoki didn't understand why Ichika didn't take the chance. Gospel pushed Haoki away and then fired shots at both her and Ichika, but luckily, they managed to dodge. Haoki was puzzled by what Ichika had just done and asked why he let such a great opportunity slip away. Ichika said that he could not proceed because there was a ship below them, even though the teachers were supposed to have closed off the waters. The ship was detected without any official registration, so it seemed like it belonged to pirates. Suddenly, Gospel resumed firing at them, and they quickly dodged the attacks. Haoki suggested that Ichika should just ignore the ship since it belonged to criminals, but Ichika refused. Gospel kept shooting at Ichika, draining his shield energy almost completely. Haoki then scolded Ichika, calling him foolish for protecting the criminals when he should have ignored the ship. Ichika reprimanded Haoki for saying that. He never expected Haoki to think that after gaining power, he would forget those weaker than him. Ichika wondered what had happened to Haoki, because this was not the Haoki he knew before. Those words deeply hurt Haoki, and she began to cry, feeling guilty. Unconsciously, her sword slipped from her hand, and she cried even harder because of the guilt. At that moment, Ichika realized that Haoki was also running low on energy. Suddenly, Gospel flew back up and rained down gunfire on them, but Haoki didn't notice. Ichika quickly shielded her from the explosions. Haoki was shocked to see Ichika take the hit to protect her, and she tried to catch him. At that point, Ichika was already powerless and unconscious. Because both of their energies were depleted, Ichika and Haoki fell into the water near the pirate ship. Meanwhile, Maya, who was in the control room with Chifuyu, asked whether the mission should continue since she couldn't detect any movement from Ichika and Haoki. Chifuyu said they hadn't been ordered to stop, so the mission would proceed. Maya then asked what they should do next. Shortly after, Charlotte knocked on the control room door, but Chifuyu told her to stay on alert and not to enter. Laura advised that they should follow Chifuyu's orders, but Charlotte was certain that Chifuyu was worried about Ichika since he was her older brother. Cecilia felt sad because Ichika still hadn't moved. Lingyan mentioned that Chifuyu hadn't checked on Ichika after ordering treatment. Previously, Ichika had lost consciousness due to Gospel's attack. Chifuyu and the others had rushed to the location to rescue him. Ichika's friends felt very sad, but Haoki could only remain silent and look gloomy. Chifuyu then instructed the rescue team to treat Ichika, but she hadn't given any more orders since. Laura asked what Chifuyu was supposed to do next. Cecilia pointed out that Chifuyu hadn't even said anything to Haoki. Although the mission had failed, Cecilia thought that Chifuyu's attitude seemed very cold in this situation. Laura believed the priority was to locate Gospel and Chifuyu would do whatever needed to be done. Laura was sure it was difficult because Chifuyu was still isolating herself in the control room. She asked her friends whether they thought visiting Ichika would help them defeat Gospel and added that there was a bigger issue they needed to deal with together. Meanwhile, Haoki was still waiting silently by Ichika's unconscious body in his room. She was deep in thought, overwhelmed by guilt. She recalled when Chifuyu and the others came to rescue Ichika after she and Ichika fell into the sea. Chifuyu said the mission had failed and that she would call them back if the situation changed, so she told everyone to stay alert. Haoki felt extremely guilty, remembering Ichika's words that he couldn't ignore the pirates. But Haoki wondered, weren't they just criminals? Ichika had asked her not to say things like that and questioned whether she thought forgetting those weaker than her after gaining strength was the right thing to do. Haoki cried and said that wasn't what she meant, and that she never intended to forget about the weak. Haoki was also wondering what Ichika meant when he called the pirates weak and whether those pirates really deserved protection, even though they were lawbreakers. She questioned how Ichika could forgive them and if that was actually his strength, and whether that might be the reason why he had become so powerful over time. Haoki then reflected on herself and wondered if she only used her strength for fighting, while for Ichika, both the pirates and Haoki herself were people who needed protection. Suddenly, Maya came over and asked Haoki to take a rest as well, since her body was also exhausted from the stress and her condition was starting to worry the others. However, Haoki refused because she wanted to keep watching over Ichika until he recovered. Maya insisted again that Haoki should rest immediately because it was a direct order from Chifuyu. Upon hearing that, Haoki finally got up and left. Haoki ran toward the edge of the beach, breathing heavily, then remembered a time back in grade school when she and Ichika were cleaning their classroom. Their classmates teased Haoki by calling her a tomboy and asked if she was carrying a wooden sword that day. Haoki was frustrated but couldn't do anything about it. Ichika told everyone to go home right away, and if they didn't want to leave, he asked them to help clean the classroom. Hearing this, the classmates started questioning why Ichika was siding with Haoki and wondered if he liked her. They even joked that Ichika was already married to Haoki and teased that they were always getting close to each other every day. They laughed more at Haoki for wearing a ribbon the day before, which made her visibly annoyed. Without hesitation, Ichika punched one of those classmates. After that, Ichika and Haoki trained in kendo together. Haoki called Ichika foolish and asked if he wasn't worried about getting into trouble for hitting his friend. Ichika said he would stand up to anyone he couldn't forgive. He told Haoki not to worry because the ribbon she wore suited her perfectly and encouraged her to wear it again. Haoki blushed, and just as Ichika was about to leave, she asked him not to call her by her family name, since her father, mother, and older sister were all at the dojo. Calling her by her last name would cause confusion. She wanted Ichika to call her by her first name only. Ichika agreed and said she should call him by his first name as well. From then on, their relationship became closer. Haoki was still feeling down, worried about Ichika's condition. Suddenly, Lingyan appeared and called out to her. Lingyan said that Haoki's thoughts were predictable. She guessed Haoki was upset because she blamed herself for what had happened to Ichika. Haoki fell silent, which only annoyed Lingyan more. Then Lingyan grabbed Haoki by the collar to snap her out of it, reminding her that there was something important she needed to do. However, Haoki said that she would never get on an Infinite Stratos again. Upon hearing this, Lingyan immediately slapped her and told her not to be so childish. She insisted that even the pilot of Personal Infinite Stratos had no right to say something like that and called her a coward who couldn't fight when it really mattered. Haoki started crying and asked what she was supposed to do. She pointed out that nobody even knew where the enemy was, but if she did, she would definitely fight. Linian was happy to see Haoki's fighting spirit return. Soon, their friends arrived as well. Charlotte said that today they would unite as one, while Cecilia reminded them that they couldn't afford to let the mission fail. Laura had already found the location of the Gospel, which was about 30 kilometers out at sea from their position. Even though the Gospel was in stealth mode, it still couldn't hide its physical form. Laura had detected it using satellite surveillance. Linian praised Laura, calling her Germany's special forces. Linian, Cecilia, and Charlotte were already prepared to head out. Haoki was surprised that all of them would join and wondered if that wasn't against orders. Linian asked if Haoki didn't want to fight as well. Haoki decided that she did want to fight and win this time. She was sure she wouldn't lose again. Linian was confident that they could all take down the Gospel. That very night, they set off for the Gospel's location. Laura immediately took aim and fired at the target. She reported that her first shot was right on target. Their movements were still being monitored from the control room, where Maya and Chifuyu were watching through the monitors. Maya said they were breaking orders and that she needed to call them back. Chifuyu then expected this to happen. At that time, Ichika was still unconscious. Haoki and the others prepared themselves to attack the Gospel together. Laura, Charlotte, Cecilia, Linian, and Haoki decided to attack the Gospel together without waiting for direct orders from Chifuyu. After Laura's first shot from her weapon successfully hit the Gospel, it immediately flew upwards. Laura signaled her friends to keep firing their ammunition at the Gospel. The Gospel quickly dodged their shots. Laura didn't expect the Gospel's flying speed to be faster than she had anticipated. At that moment, the Gospel was about to attack Laura, but Cecilia deliberately collided with it. Cecilia immediately launched a long-range attack at the Gospel, forcing it to fly away to avoid her strike. Charlotte quickly unleashed her own assault on the Gospel. The Gospel continued to dodge and counterattack. Charlotte activated her protective shield to block the Gospel's incoming shots. Meanwhile, Ichika was lost in a dream. He recalled his past. He was near the water under a clear blue sky, where he saw a girl who looked very familiar. Ichika approached her. The girl looked up at the sky and told Ichika that someone was calling him and that he had to leave immediately. Ichika glanced at the sky, but before he could react further, the girl vanished from his sight, leaving him startled by what had just happened. Back in the present, Cecilia and her friends were still struggling to defeat the Gospel. Cecilia asked if they would be able to win. Linian said it didn't seem likely yet because the Gospel kept moving and attacking them. Linian fired her cannon at the Gospel. Meanwhile, in Ichika's dream, the blue sky suddenly shifted to dusk and an Infinite Stratos appeared before him. The Infinite Stratos asked if Ichika wanted power. At the same time, Haoki was engaged in close combat against the Gospel, wielding her two swords. However, the powerful Gospel managed to hold off both of Akatsubaki's swords. Seeing this, Laura told Haoki to drop her swords and quickly move aside because the situation was dangerous. Their friends were worried about Haoki's safety. Haoki kept fighting the Gospel, and when the Gospel was about to attack her again, Haoki managed to break one of his arms. As a result, the Gospel instantly fell to the seabed. Laura immediately approached Haoki to check if she was okay. Haoki said she was fine. Meanwhile, in Ichika's dream, the Infinite Stratos still asked if he wanted power, but Ichika hadn't answered yet. Suddenly, a massive wave surged from the seabed. It turned out that the Gospel with its broken arm had risen and managed to reattach its arm. The Gospel regained its strength and activated its second shift to recover. It seemed like the situation was about to become even more dangerous. Back in the dream, the Infinite Stratos kept asking Ichika if he wanted power. Finally, Ichika nodded. The Infinite Stratos asked what he planned to do with that power. Ichika confessed that he needed the power to protect his friends. He also said that in this world, everyone has to fight for many reasons because there is a lot of unjust violence, and he wanted to help his friends as much as he could. Ichika explained that those friends were the ones fighting alongside him in such a world. Not long after, Ichika found himself back near the water under the blue sky, and the girl appeared again. She urged Ichika to leave quickly, then shook his hand firmly before they parted ways. Meanwhile, the Gospel that had risen fired an attack at Haoki, knocking her down. After that, the Gospel flew after Cecilia, trapping her and launching an explosion attack. Cecilia immediately lost consciousness. Following that, the Gospel's attack penetrated Charlotte's protective shield. Haoki, weakened and on the verge of fainting, suddenly wished to see Ichika. Unexpectedly, she heard Ichika's voice calling her. That voice brought Haoki back to awareness. She did not expect to see Ichika standing right in front of her at that moment. Ichika quickly apologized for making Haoki wait. Haoki was surprised and asked how Ichika was doing, as well as about the injuries on his body. Ichika assured her that he was fine and that he could still fight, even though everyone was trying to stop him. Hearing this, Haoki became emotional and started to cry tears of relief, feeling very grateful for Ichika's condition. Ichika wondered why Haoki was crying, but she wiped her tears away and said she wasn't crying. Ichika then handed her a handkerchief and told her that she looked more beautiful with her usual hairstyle. He also wished Haoki a happy birthday, remembering that July 7th was her birthday. Ichika then said goodbye and left. By that time, Haoki had calmed down somewhat and hoped that Ichika would succeed in the battle. Meanwhile, in the control room, Maya asked if the communication lines were still having problems. Shifuyu said it was pointless to try since Laura and the others probably had already turned off their devices. Suddenly, Yuko and her friends showed up at the control room, but Shifuyu stopped them from entering. They informed Shifuyu about Ichika's situation. Maya monitored the scene from a screen and saw the second form of Byakushiki called Setsura. Ichika was currently fighting Gospel. Gospel began to fire at Ichika heavily, so Ichika immediately switched Setsura as shield mode to protect himself from the attacks. Haoki arrived quickly, but Gospel kept shooting at him. Ichika was worried about Haoki, but Haoki told him not to get distracted. Soon after, Laura and Cecilia appeared, having recovered from their earlier condition. Cecilia, Laura, Lingyan, and Charlotte joined in to help Ichika launch a counterattack. Lingyan told Ichika not to worry about them because they still had plenty of energy. Haoki felt relieved knowing Ichika had arrived to fight. She really wanted to battle alongside him and protect him from behind. Suddenly, the energy of Akatsubaki was fully recharged, and Haoki was surprised to discover that this ability was called Kenran Butu, something she only realized at that moment. Haoki tied her hair with a ribbon and quickly headed out to fight alongside Ichika. Shifuyu and Maya kept monitoring Ichika, and Maya noticed that Byakushiki's energy had dropped to 10%. Ichika was holding back Gospel and was fully aware of the danger. Fortunately, Haoki arrived and transferred some energy to Ichika. Once Ichika's energy was restored, Haoki urged him to defeat Gospel. The six of them then flew together to fight Gospel, who continued to attack them with rapid gunfire. Haoki attacked Gospel from close range to limit his movements, then signaled Ichika to prepare for an attack. As Ichika approached, Gospel threw Haoki away. Ichika swung his sword repeatedly, but kept missing because Gospel moved at high speed and kept firing rapidly. Ichika then asked Laura to shoot at Gospel, and Gospel immediately attacked Laura in response. Cecilia fired at Gospel from behind. With Gospel being attacked from two sides, Lingyan urged Ichika to try again. However, Gospel quickly flew and rained down more gunfire. Charlotte quickly protected Lingyan and told Ichika to hurry because they were both running out of energy. Ichika closed in on Gospel and swung his sword to perform the Raryaku Bakuya attack. He pushed hard, pressing his sword against Gospel's body until they both fell onto the beach. After a long struggle, Gospel's shield energy finally ran out. In the end, they succeeded in defeating Gospel. After that, Ichika and the others returned to meet Shifuyu. She said that she really wanted to declare the mission complete, but unfortunately, all six of them had committed a serious violation. Shifuyu instructed them to write a formal report acknowledging their mistakes once they got back to Infinite Stratos Academy. She also told them to prepare for a special training session that would be part of their punishment. Hearing this, Maya reminded Shifuyu that the six of them must be exhausted after the battle. Shifuyu then praised their hard work and said she was grateful they all came back safely. She gave them permission to rest, which surprised them. During dinner, their friends asked about what really caused Gospel to go out of control and whether it was true that no one had been piloting it. Everyone was really curious to hear the full story about the fight with Gospel, since the teachers hadn't shared any details. Charlotte said that it was something that was supposed to be kept secret. Lingyan added that even they didn't know exactly what happened. Laura went as far as warning that if the other students found out, they might also be punished. Yuko responded by saying that she and the others didn't want to constantly feel like they were being watched. Meanwhile, Ichika and Haoki were missing from the dinner table, and Cecilia said she had no idea where they were. That night, Thabane and Shifuyu were standing near the water. Thabane admitted that Byakushiki had really surprised her. She didn't expect it to be able to restore its pilot's body like a white knight. Shifuyu commented that Byakushiki was a lot like Core Number 1, the very first Infinite Stratos that Thabane had painstakingly developed. Shifuyu then started imagining a scenario. What if a genius intentionally lured a boy who was taking the school entrance exam to the location of an Infinite Stratos unit? Then that genius secretly set it up so that the IS would activate at just the right moment. The IS, which should have been impossible for a male to operate, would suddenly move. Hearing this, Thabane asked whether the IS was only supposed to activate that one time. Then she laughed and admitted that even she didn't know how Byakushiki was able to function the way it did. Shifuyu offered another theory. What if a genius had a plan to help her little sister make a spectacular debut on the world stage? The only tools needed would be a brand new Infinite Stratos unit, and one Rove is causing chaos somewhere. In the middle of the confusion, the genius would insert her sister's is into the mission plan, allowing her sister to make a grand entrance. Fabiana responded by saying that the genius Shifuyu described must have been truly brilliant. Shifuyu agreed, noting that the genius even managed to break into secure computer networks from 12 different countries. Fabiana then asked Shifuyu if she enjoyed the world back then. Shifuyu admitted that she did. Meanwhile, Ichika was sitting alone by the water, planning to go for a swim. As he sat there, he started wondering whether he could really protect his friends. Not long after, Hoki approached him wearing a swimsuit. Ichika asked if she came to swim as well. Hoki said she was trying to clear her head, but ended up finding him there instead. Ichika was momentarily captivated by how she looked in her swimsuit and couldn't take his eyes off her. Hoki, feeling shy, asked him to stop staring at her like that. Ichika apologized right away. He then asked if her hair was okay, whether it got singed a little. Hoki replied that her hair was fine and she even got a new ribbon. Ichika felt incredibly relieved that everyone had made it back safely, and that his injuries weren't too serious either. Hoki, however, asked if he was really doing alright because she found it hard to believe someone could recover from injuries like that so quickly. Ichika reassured her, saying the wounds weren't as bad as they looked and told her not to worry so much. Hoki suddenly raised her voice, saying of course she was worried. Ichika got hurt because of her, and if things had gone even slightly differently, he could have died. That's why she didn't like how easily he was willing to forgive her. Hearing that, Ichika said he felt like he should give her a punishment. He asked Hoki to close her eyes. When she did, Ichika flicked her forehead gently, then said the punishment was done. Hoki thought he was mocking her. Ichika tried to calm her down and asked her not to get so worked up. Still upset, Hoki said that she was a swordswoman and couldn't stay calm when her pride was being stepped on. She kept talking while getting closer to Ichika, and he nervously pointed out that her chest was pressing against him. That made Hoki blush and quickly back away in embarrassment. Blushing, she asked if Ichika was acknowledging her. Ichika was confused at first and not sure what she meant. Hoki then grabbed his hand and pressed it against her chest, asking again if he recognized her as a woman. Ichika said that he did, which finally seemed to ease her mind. Just as Ichika leaned in, seemingly about to kiss her, a sudden shot fired toward them. It turned out that Laura, Cecilia, Lingyan, and Charlotte had found them. Laura said they had been wondering where the two of them had gone, only to discover that Ichika was alone with Hoki. Charlotte asked what exactly he was doing. Lingyan gave a signal to the others as if to say they should take him out, while Cecilia simply laughed. Seeing how upset the four of them were, Ichika quickly grabbed Hoki and made a run for it. He carried her as the four of them continued to shoot at him from above. They were furious, not because of what happened, but because they had been genuinely worried about him. Ichika shouted back that he hadn't done anything at all. That day, Charlotte came to Ichika's house. As she arrived at the gate, she looked really nervous. She gathered her courage and was about to press the doorbell, but suddenly, Ichika showed up behind her. He called out to her, which startled Charlotte and made her scream a little. Embarrassed and flustered, she awkwardly said it was such a beautiful day. Ichika was confused by her comment. Because she was so nervous, Charlotte ended up introducing herself and asked if Ichika was home, which only confused him even more. Realizing how odd she sounded, Charlotte quickly tried to play it off and welcomed him instead. Ichika was clearly puzzled by her behavior. She became even more embarrassed and scolded herself internally for talking as if she were his girlfriend. Ichika then invited Charlotte inside. She was surprised that he actually let her in. Ichika asked if she had come over just to hang out or if she had plans to go somewhere else. Charlotte quickly denied having any other plans. Ichika couldn't quite understand her strange behavior and even called her weird, but Charlotte seemed happy to be called that by him. It was her first time visiting Ichika's house, so she asked whether he handled all the house chores by himself. Ichika explained that he did, since Shifuyu was always busy and rarely home. Hearing that, Charlotte thought Ichika would probably make a great husband one day. Ichika served her some barley tea, and Charlotte truly enjoyed spending that quiet time alone with him. Not long after, Cecilia arrived at the front door. She said she was just passing by and decided to drop in. She had brought some cake from a well-known bakery that was supposed to be really good. When Ichika opened the door, Cecilia was surprised to see Charlotte already there. Charlotte, on the other hand, looked annoyed, thinking she would get to have Ichika all to herself. Cecilia also seemed a bit upset to see Charlotte there and began wondering if Charlotte had planned all this ahead of time. Ichika tried one of the cakes Cecilia brought and said it tasted great. He offered both of them a chance to try it too. Cecilia agreed that it was a great idea, and Charlotte remarked that it almost felt like feeding each other. Unexpectedly, Ichika agreed, which caught both Charlotte and Cecilia off guard. Ichika asked if they were okay with eating something a guy had already tasted. In sync, both of them said they didn't mind at all. In fact, they wanted to try all the cakes. For a moment, Charlotte and Cecilia were totally in sync. They both closed their eyes, waiting to be fed by Ichika. Cecilia got the first bite, and the moment the cake touched her lips, she felt overjoyed. Then it was Charlotte's turn. As soon as Ichika gave her a bite, she said she really loved it. When Ichika was about to reach for another piece of cake, Cecilia suggested that it was her turn to feed him. Charlotte chimed in, saying that was definitely the right thing to do. Ichika tried to refuse, saying he could eat by himself, but both girls insisted that he should let them feed him. Just as Cecilia and Charlotte were asking Ichika to open his mouth, the doorbell rang again. This time, Haoki, Lingyan, and Laura had arrived. Lingyan was surprised to see Charlotte and Cecilia already there. That was when Cecilia realized that all of them had probably come with the same idea in mind. After Ichika invited them to sit down, he mentioned that if they had planned to come over, it would have been nice if someone had told him ahead of time. Haoki says she only realized that morning that she had some free time. Lingyan said the same and asked if Ichika was unhappy that they showed up unannounced. Laura explained that she just wanted to surprise him and she thought that would make him happy. Ichika suggested that they all hang out inside since it was really hot outside. Haoki felt like she had arrived at the perfect time just as Ichika got home. Lingyan was glad they weren't out walking, since running into Don and Ron outside would have made things messy. Cecilia was really curious to learn something new about Ichika. Meanwhile, Charlotte quietly hoped that maybe, just maybe, she would get the chance to see Ichika's room if the opportunity came up. Laura felt like visiting Chifuyu's house was actually a pretty fun idea. Ichika started wondering what they could all do together with that many people. Eventually, he suggested they play a clay guessing game. Haoki agreed to start the game with Laura, with Haoki as the guesser and Laura as the sculptor. After Laura shaped something out of the clay and placed it in front of them, Haoki asked for some clues. Laura said it was something found on Earth, bigger than a human and not man-made. Haoki thought for a moment and guessed it was an oil well. The guess was wrong, and Charlotte, Cecilia, and Lingyan were confused as to why Haoki thought it was an oil well. Laura said the answer might have been too difficult for Haoki, even though it was actually just a mountain. Ichika was surprised, saying the mountain didn't look sharp enough to match Laura's sculpture. Laura insisted that's what Mount Everest looks like. Ichika said she could have just said it was Everest, so that everyone would get it right away. Laura told him not to argue with her since he was her husband. Ichika immediately denied that and said he definitely was not her husband. Just then, Chifuyu walked in and everyone greeted her. Ichika quickly approached her and offered to make her lunch, but Chifuyu said she had already eaten. He then offered her some tea instead. The girls were surprised by how Ichika was treating Chifuyu, and they joked that the two of them acted like a married couple. Chifuyu told them she had to head back out again because teachers tend to get really busy during summer. She said they could rest but firmly told them they weren't allowed to spend the night at her house. Before she left, Chifuyu reminded Haoki that she should go visit her aunt since it had been a while since she went home. After that, she left and Ichika commented on how tough being a teacher must be. Out of the blue, Charlotte asked why Ichika seemed like Chifuyu's wife. Lingyan chimed in, saying Ichika always stuck close to Chifuyu. Ichika said that was totally normal since they were siblings. After hanging out for a while, Ichika said he wanted to prepare dinner and needed to go buy ingredients. The others offered to help with the cooking. However, when Cecilia offered to help, they quickly told her not to. They all headed to the supermarket to shop. At the store, Charlotte was reminded of the time she went shopping with her mom. Laura mentioned how, during her time in the military, she and her comrades would take turns cooking, and she was eager to show off her skills. While shopping, Cecilia asked Lingyan why she wasn't allowed to cook, even though she wanted to show everyone what British cooking was like. Lingyan seemed puzzled that the UK was represented by someone as troublesome as Cecilia. Then Ichika asked if it had been a while since they visited the shrine. Haoki admitted that if Chifuyu hadn't reminded her, she wouldn't have thought of going. Ichika was sure Aunt Yukiko would be happy if Haoki paid her a visit. Just as Haoki was about to say something to Ichika, they saw Charlotte and Lingyan struggling to hold Cecilia back, who was determined to cook. Ichika was confused by the chaos, while Cecilia insisted she just wanted Ichika to taste her cooking. While preparing ingredients, Lingyan scolded Laura for not peeling the potatoes properly. Laura argued that no one knew how to pick potatoes better than she did back in Germany. She then confidently sliced the potatoes quickly and efficiently. Ichika then asked Haoki what she was going to say to him earlier at the supermarket. Haoki brushed it off and asked instead if Ichika was really okay letting Cecilia cook. But it was already too late. Cecilia had dumped a huge amount of sauce into the pot. Charlotte suggested it would be better if Cecilia didn't help at all. Cecilia said she couldn't just stand around doing nothing while everyone else was working. She told Charlotte not to worry, insisting her cooking would turn out great in the end. Meanwhile, Laura proudly showed Ichika the odd hand she made, though its shape looked questionable. Laura said one of her subordinates in Germany had taught her how to make it. Lingian was confused about what kind of Japanese culture Laura's subordinates actually knew. Suddenly, Ichika and Lingian were startled by an explosion coming from the pot Cecilia was using. Charlotte said Cecilia was reckless for using a laser to heat the pot. Cecilia, unfazed, proudly claimed that failure was just part of the path to success and that she would try again. But the others quickly stopped her and told her she could help by just setting the table instead. That night, Chifuryu and Maya were having drinks together at a bar. Maya mentioned that Chifuryu seemed quite considerate at home, letting Ichika and the others have fun there. Chifuryu replied that if she were always around at home, they wouldn't be able to relax. Maya then asked if taking care of Ichika and all of his girlfriends didn't get tiring for her as his older sister. Chifuryu admitted that during the school trip, she had said something a bit over the top to those girls. She told them that she wouldn't allow any of the 5 to have Ichika. At the time, she hadn't really thought it through or meant anything strange by it, but they ended up seeing her as a rival. Maya laughed and said that Chifuryu was just like Ichika. Surprised, Chifuryu asked how she was anything like him. Maya explained that it was because of Chifuryu's kindness, which had no limits. Chifuryu jokingly asked if Maya had ever even seen a man before. Maya laughed and admitted that things had definitely changed. People had grown up, done all sorts of things, and life was full of surprises. Chifuryu teased her and said she sounded like a grandma. Meanwhile, Ichika and the others were enjoying their time together making dinner. They cooked dishes like mikujaga, simmered fish, karage, oden, and even ended up with a burnt pot. The 6 of them happily shared the meal they had made together. That day, Hoki visited the shrine for the first time in a while. The shrine was busy preparing for the upcoming summer festival. Not long after she arrived, Aunt Yukiko called out to her. It had been a while since they last saw each other. Aunt Yukiko figured Haoki probably wanted to walk around a bit. She was very grateful for Haoki's help, especially since she had been waiting for someone who could perform the Kagura dance like her. Haoki was happy she could be useful to the shrine again. While taking a bath, Haoki suddenly thought about how, if Thabana had never discovered the infinite Stratos, she might have just stayed at the shrine forever and always stayed close to Ichika. She wondered what Ichika might be doing at that moment. Later that evening during the festival, Ichika showed up at the shrine and found Haoki working at one of the booths. Haoki was shocked to see him there, but Ichika said he figured she would be there since it was festival night. He asked why she hadn't told him she would be at the festival. Haoki confessed she felt a bit embarrassed. She didn't want Ichika to see her wearing traditional clothes like that, and she couldn't bring herself to say it because she was worried he might tease her. To her surprise, Ichika was actually amazed by how she looked and said that she looked beautiful in feminine clothes. Haoki froze in disbelief. She was convinced it must have been a dream and even shouted to herself to wake up. Shortly after, Aunt Yukiko encouraged Haoki to go take a quick walk and come back before the Kagura dance started. She even offered to find a yukata for her. Hearing that, Haoki could hardly believe that she might get to walk around the festival with Ichika while wearing a yukata, especially after he had just said she looked beautiful in feminine clothing. Suddenly, Ran showed up and greeted Ichika. In the end, Ichika ended up walking around the festival with both Ran and Haoki. Haoki couldn't understand how things had turned out that way. It turned out Ran had gotten separated from Dan, so Ichika invited her to walk around with them. Ran introduced herself to Haoki and said that she had already heard a lot about her from Ichika. Haoki also knew that Ran was the younger sister of Ichika's friend. Ran admitted that her older brother was kind of clueless and always caused problems for Ichika. Ichika mentioned that it was the first time he had seen Ran wearing a yukata and gave her a compliment. Ran blushed and thanked him. After that, Ichika invited them to get some snacks, play a goldfish scooping game, and do some target shooting. Ichika asked Ran if she wanted to look for her older brother, but she refused, saying that she felt more grown up now. Since she was about to enter high school, she didn't want to keep depending on her brother all the time. At the same time, Haoki looked a bit down because Ichika seemed to be talking with Ran more. She felt that Ichika didn't always understand how she felt, and she still wondered what he had been thinking when he had tried to kiss her before. Seeing Haoki so quiet, Ran shared that Ichika had told her Haoki was an amazing Infinite Stratos pilot. He had said Haoki really showed her skills during the school trip. Embarrassed, Haoki brushed it off and said it was thanks to her friends. Ran also mentioned that Haoki had been a kendo champion since she was little, which really impressed her. Haoki smiled and thanked her. Not long after, Daon could be heard shouting as he looked for Ran. He went around asking people if they had seen his little sister, even describing her in detail, including the fact that she didn't have much of a chest. Ran was irritated and said she was going to teach him a lesson. Haoki smiled, commenting that they seemed like close siblings. After that, Haoki got ready for the Kagura dance performance and Ichika cheered her on. She danced beautifully on stage and the audience praised her. Many couldn't believe someone that elegant and stunning was performing there. Ichika was completely mesmerized by her performance. After the Kagura dance, Haoki and Ichika went for a walk together again. She asked what he thought about her dancing and Ichika told her it was really amazing. They walked up to a higher place with a great view. Haoki loved it because from there she could see the entire city and the Infinite Stratos Academy as well. Ichika started talking about all the things that had happened since he entered the academy, how researchers began studying why he was able to operate in Infinite Stratos, how the news picked it up, how he ended up attending the academy, met so many people, and went through so many experiences. But most importantly, he said he was grateful to have met Haoki again. Haoki was deeply touched by his words. Nervously, she began to express how she felt about him. But at that exact moment, fireworks exploded in the sky and Ichika didn't hear her. So Haoki gently rested her head on Ichika's shoulder, and the two of them quietly enjoyed the fireworks together.